Okay, the meeting will now come to order. Ms. Almond, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Conley,
Here.
Mr. Emig,
Here.
Mr. Hogan,
Here.
Mr. Kindig,
Here.
Mr. McKinney,
Present.
Mrs. Meese. Here. Mrs. Miller. Here. Mrs. Whitmer. Here. Mr. Wolverton.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you, Ms. Almond. I'd like to welcome the public, and I'll give you a moment to join your seats. We'll be starting with the pledge here as our next item of business. All right, let's stand for the pledge. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this is a business planning meeting. I want to welcome all the members of the public and all the folks joining us via social media. The intent of a planning meeting is to discuss the issues, so you'll hear the board deliberating and discussing. We will not vote on the issues tonight. We will be voting on those issues on the agenda for next week's meeting on next Tuesday night. So for our first presentation, we have the 2024-2025 preliminary budget presentation.
You're good. Now I can see. Welcome everybody for the first presentation for the 24-25 school year. And everybody who came out on this very rainy day. So what we're going to do is I wanted to start off by saying that all the department and building budgets have either been maintained or decreased from 23-24. And the following contractually obligated costs, which I'll discuss on the next slide, have been adjusted. Which is salary and benefits, student transportation, debt service, lease equipment, charter school and alternative education, special education, our core program for ELA and math, and utilities. So outlined in white are the contractually obligated costs, and outlined in gray are the controllable costs or the building and department budgets. And examples of contractually obligated would be the contracts for the teachers and support staff, the contract that was signed with Direct Energy for utilities, the placement of cyber and charter school students. Those are some of the items, just as an example. The transportation contract that was signed with the EMB, those are some of the examples of contractually obligated expenses that are enforceable by law or required by state and federal government. So while I do appreciate this is very, very tiny, and even I cannot read it with my glasses on, we did include a PDF version of this that's a lot more legible. So for financial and fiscal transparency purposes, I gave a breakdown of all of the categories of the budget and the percentage that it represents in the budget. And if you notice in the top 10 items, the majority of those items are contractually obligated costs. So what I'm going to do going through all the slides is take the same approach as I did for the 22-23 final year-end results and the 23-24 projected September 30th projected actuals. I'm going to go by object code. So the changes to the expenditure budget for next year in salary and benefits, we're looking at about a 2.75% increase in salaries. Again, it's according to contracts and agreements. The Social Security and the retirement expense is also obviously based on the increase in salaries. We have medical insurance rate increases, which at this point is 15%. That is determined by our benefits consultant at Conrad Siegel, and they are through the LIU. We have an increase in substitute teacher costs, and really the only reason is because I was making it comparable to the last several years. We've seen an uptick in substitute teacher costs, and it wasn't reflected in the budget, but it did, so that would cause a discrepancy in budget to actual, so I did increase that. And the removal of the ESSER expenditures. In purchase professional services, we have about $50,000 of items that were previously funded through federal grants. Starting out, it's professional development and staff training, which was paid for with Title IIA. We have screening services such as Aperture and BH Works, and student assistant programs. An example would be the Pennsylvania Comprehensive Behavioral Health. The only change to purchase property services is the removal of the construction costs for the ESSER expenses. Other purchase services, the majority of the increases are related to tuition. Increase for cyber charter and alternative education. As I had outlined in the September 30th budget to actual projections, we do currently have about 13 additional cyber students right now over last year. The increase in the tuition to York County School of Technology is due to the fact that they're anticipating 8 additional students over what they had anticipated for this fiscal year. It's really based on the October 1st, 2023 enrollment numbers that they're seeing. Increased costs of transportation by the anticipated CPI, which is in our contract with EMB. And we also have a very small increase in property and liability insurance. In supplies, books, software, and utilities, we have the ELA and math core program changes and increased costs for natural gas and electricity. Again, I did outline this in the 23-24 budget actual projections. As of right now, we're seeing a 13% increase per kilowatt hour from last year at this time and a 17% increase per volume in natural gas. Equipment, the additional of technology equipment. What this is it's a GASB entry. It's a net zero. It doesn't have an impact on the bottom line. It's expense and a revenue. It's just really for GASB recording purposes, and it's going to be for when we purchase the new iPads. And then we also have facilities equipment. And I'm sure if you have any questions regarding this, I'm sure Tom can speak to it because he's got all the history and the detail behind it. But unfortunately, there was no succession plan for the equipment. There was no recurring replacement schedule. So right now we have a lot of outdated equipment and vehicles that are very costly to fix or can't be fixed at all. So in that request, we have 2 maintenance trucks, we have a utility trailer and a mower, along with some plow equipment, which again, he can speak to with concerns about winter. Changes to debt are just really according to the capital lease payment schedule, which is very similar to the debt schedule. They're built very much so the same. And a small removal of ESSER expenses. So in local sources real estate, I included a 1.5% increase in the regular real estate taxable base. That's what I've been seeing over the last 5 years, and it's really just based on the residential construction. We are currently sitting at a 96.5% collection rate, which equates to $461,000 additional. I also added Mavis Tire, which I'm sure we all saw came on board this year. I will discuss later how I determined the $46,000. And we increased interim real estate taxes to be comparable to the last several years, again, based on the residential properties. Other local sources, we're seeing an increase in EIT taxes, so I just increased it to be comparable to the last several years. Increased earnings, interest earnings, IDA funding based on what we're seeing for 23-24. And then we have the decrease in tuition due to the end of the Washington Township Agreement and a very small reduction of mainstreaming. In state sources, there's an increase in 2% in the basic education subsidy. That is a conservative number, and obviously when the governor's budget comes out, we can make changes to make it go up or down. We received 2% last year, and I feel like that may be something that we're going to be sitting at for the next several years because one of the items in the formula is ADMs. So they use 3 years of ADMs. And so for 23-24, that was the first year we saw the loss of Washington Township students. So our ADMs decreased. So we're going to see that actually come back in for 24-25 and 25-26. And then once we get to 26-27 and we have 3 years just with Dover Township and Dover Borough, that's when I think we possibly will see some other increases that may be a little bit larger than that. But in the next 2 years, we are going to see a decrease of ADMs, which does have an impact on what we receive. Increase in Social Security and PSERS, again, just according to the salaries. Increase in the transportation subsidy, and that is based on the anticipated expenditures for 23-24. Transportation subsidy is a year behind. So we record all of our expenditures, we submit it, and then they pay us for it in the following year. Rental and sinking fund payments, really that is just a reimbursement we get from the state for our debt payments. And there's also going to be a decrease in special education subsidy. So when I originally put the budget together, I used the governor's March anticipated revenue. And when the budget was enacted, it was $160,000 less, which if you go back and look at the 23-24 budget to actuals, you'll see that I did note that. Again, part of that is because of the ADMs. That's a factor in determining special education subsidy. And the other piece is the fact that we had less students in the higher expenditure categories. So those two things caused a decrease in the special education subsidy. Federal sources, obviously, we'll see the removal of ESSER. There's a small reduction of federal funding, our title funding, which is according to our 23-24 amounts, and an increase in the utilization of access funding. Other financing sources, again, as I discussed, the technology equipment entry, net zero, it's an expenditure, it's a revenue, it's what we have to, it's how we have to book it for financial statement purposes. And an increase in the sale of fixed assets to reflect the sale of iPads and MacBooks.
Could you clarify that number? Is that an actual $146, or is this something else?
Oh, 146,000, sorry, 146,000, yes.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, yep. So overview, we're anticipating approximately a $4 million deficit. And that's obviously based on everything that I just discussed. So I can take questions, or I do have 2 more slides. I can present those as well, and then I can take questions at the end. Does anybody have a preference?
Go ahead and present the slides.
Okay. So this is how I estimated the real estate tax calculation. I took the assessed value. So I took the assessed value from York County for 23-24, and I increased that by 1.5%. And that's, again, for residential properties. The collection rate is 96.5, and that is because obviously some individuals and some people pay at discount, some people pay at face, and some people pay at penalty, and some is turned over for collections, and that equates to 96.5%. I added the Mavis tire estimate. It has not been assessed as of right now. I contacted the county. I anticipated about a $1.7 million possible taxable assessment, and that's based on Thornton Tire that came online in like 2018, and that's what it was assessed at. So I thought that would be a reasonable estimation. So if you take the 2 of those together, we're looking at an overall increase of $507,000. There is obviously, I know that there's discussion about the warehouses, the solar projects, Wawa, move-in storage. John McLucas, who's the director of planning for Dover Township, he will be discussing those next week. I did have conversations with him about it. He said those are coming online anywhere between now and 2028-29. He said he thought most of them are going to come on board around 2026, but he probably has more details. Last time I spoke to him was November. So the next steps in the budget process at the next meeting in February, the first meeting in February, the administration will be presenting various budget scenarios to include fund balance usage, budget reductions, and tax increases. Are there any questions that I can take?
I have a question. So on the items that have funding that we no longer have funding for, does that mean that those expenses will continue, or does do they come to an end?
Some of them came to an end and some of them were put back into the budget, but it was a slide scale because we had the grants for so long that it didn't all happen in one shot. So yes, I mean, some are, but a lot of them are. You'll just see a few small amounts that are going to be coming in. Unfortunately, because of the fact that ESSER 3, there was a huge amount for construction that was in the budget, as opposed to recurring costs.
So to that point, we're losing 3.1 in ESSER's revenue,
Correct.
but we're only removing 1 million in expenses. So
Oh, no,
there's
we're
a $2
moving.
million difference.
No, we are. No. You have to add up all those three pieces. You have to add up salaries, the 400 purchased property, and a little bit in 800, 900. So I split it out for each type of category.
So again, the difference is the 2 million.
No,
So-
the difference is negligible. The 2 million, if you go to, I'll show you.
Okay, sorry.
There we go. So I split it out by object category as opposed to just lumping it all together.
I understand. Thank you.
It just makes more sense if you're looking at like budget to budget when
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, reference to cyber students.
Mhm.
So 288,000 increase due to 13 or so students.
Alternative placements, but yes, it all depends too. Our cyber charter school costs are based on our budgets. And so that comes in typically for a regular ed student right now between 13 and 14,000, and for a special ed student, it's close to 30,000.
So now, are these students that were, in-person students and now they're transitioning to cyber, or?
I can't
just-
tell you, I could get that information. I don't know off the top of my head. All I did was ask for a count of number of students.
I can help answer that question.
Okay.
Some of them are students that were attending our brick and mortar school who just decide they don't want to come to a brick and mortar school anymore and have decided to go to a cyber charter school. A few of them, and I can count them on one hand, were students that were in our cyber program, were doing no work, were failing, and we told them they have to come back to our building. They did not want to come back to our building, so they went to one of these outside cyber schools where I believe they are allowed to stay and fail where we don't let them stay and
So
fail.
that's where the expense comes from, is we're transitioning tuition to the other academy.
Correct. And the tuition is different for every school district because it's based on what we spend per pupil.
Mhm.
So that
Yes.
per pupil expense goes to the charter cyber school.
Okay, so none of these additional expenditures are from them going to the Dover Cyber Academy?
No.
None at all? Okay. Because that's where I was confused about it. Why wouldn't there be offsets? It seems
Right.
it would be cheaper to teach somebody online than it would be, brick and mortar.
Yeah, and it's significantly cheaper for us to have them in our Dover cyber. We spend about $3,000 a student in our Dover cyber, as opposed to what did you say, 13
It
or
could be
30
13 to 15 or 30, depending if the student has an IUP.
for outside cyber?
Okay. Could you explain GASB again?
GASB, Governmental Accounting Standards Board. It's one of the entities that governs our financial statements. So GASB 87 with leases, if you look that up, you can read it. It's probably will put you to sleep. It's a lot of information, but it will give you detail as to how the entries are proposed.
Okay. And you mentioned EDMs a couple of times.
ADMs, average daily membership.
Okay.
Yep.
ADMs.
Mhm.
All right.
I have
Yep.
a question in regards
Yes.
to the Washington Township agreement and reduction of mainstreaming, negative 133. So can you explain a little bit more, like, are we losing or it looks like we're losing?
We are losing it, yes, because Washington Township was paying us for the students, and it was only a 3-year agreement, and next year it ends. And then also we do mainstreaming. All the districts in York County do through the LAU, and we've just seen a significant reduction in the last several years of mainstreaming students.
Any other questions?
I have questions, but they may or may not be for you,
Okay.
but it's in the budget.
I'll give it a shot.
What grades have iPads? Do all the grades have iPads?
Dustin, I believe all the grades have iPads, correct?
Yes, it's K to 12. K to 12.
And we list 600 and all but 70,000 for library or for books. Is that? I'm confused because I was under the impression we have very few books anymore that we're writing curriculum.
I think that Rena can speak to that because she's outlined, it's all core program.
Are you referring to the ELA core program and the Everyday Math core program? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm referring to her summary sheet where she lists 668,000 for books.
That would be those two, Rena.
So if our reading program that we are using in kindergarten through 5th grade has sunsetted, which means the one that we're using, they are no longer printing. So we are forced to look at a new program because they're not making it anymore. So that is the program that we are currently piloting that I have been updating the board on, and you'll be getting that presentation. We looked at 3 different core programs. We had the vendors come in, and we were fortunate that the core program we liked was the cheapest of all of them. So that's what that is. The Everyday Math core program is the core program we are currently using, but the 3-year contract that we entered prior to my getting here has expired. We could look for a new math program, but quite honestly, I cannot ask my teachers to implement a new reading program and a new math program at the same time. That's just way too difficult for a teacher to be able to do. So rather than asking them to implement 2 new programs, we're just going to keep using the one we are using, but now we have to pay for the next 3 years. So it's just an extension of that reading program and the math program.
Okay, again, being new terminology, but I know when my grandson went to Dover, he was doing math problems. I tried to help him, and he had 6 or 7 pages of paper to do one problem. Is that the everyday math program?
So the Everyday Math program comes with teacher manuals, and there is a journal, a workbook that students work through that's consumable. And there's also online components to the Everyday Math program. There's a set of manipulatives that go with the Everyday Math program. So those are tools that the kids use. All of that, the lessons, it's your basic teacher manual that teachers have been using for decades. That is nothing new. So when our teachers taught, they taught from a manual and they taught from a program. And so that's what we're talking about, is that program that teachers use. Does that make sense?
Yes and no.
Okay. How can I help?
He had 7 pages of numbers.
Well, and sometimes
Problem, and that was strange to me.
and sometimes those worksheets are printed from the company. The teacher didn't draw them or create
No,
them.
I'm not
Yeah.
questioning the teacher. I'm questioning the program.
But what I'm saying is the worksheets that your grandson may have had were from the program that we purchased. They were not created by the teacher.
And finally, do we shop for natural gas and electricity? Like in residential, you can shop and lock in for a couple of years at a good rate.
What we do is we are in a consortium with the LIU, and they hedge. So we have advisors that are on a board, and they hedge. They hedge to get us the best rates possible. But I'm sure, as you've seen with your residential as well, I mean, the costs are outrageous. I mean, at this point in time, they're using natural gas to power electric plants, and it's really coming to a head right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a follow-up to Director Kindig's question and then one of my own. I think you're referring to the method of the math, correct? Not the actual number of pages or printed pages.
It's
The
just
amount of-
something that was totally different to me from what 50 years ago when I was in school. Okay, so-
I agree with you too. As an accountant, I've had issues helping my 3rd grader with math in the past, the way they do it. But so this book budget line here is the software, the programs, book,
It's all of it.
not actual textbooks.
It is actual textbook.
Okay.
Well, In math, they're consumables, so the kids
Yeah,
write in
they come
them.
with the software.
Correct.
Okay.
And then with the reading program, it would be all of the books that come with the reading program, the books that are in the kids' hands, the books that the teachers use, the lessons. They're all designed and for the teachers so that we have consistency from K to 5. When teachers are creating their own lessons, then there's no consistency. What one teacher is doing could be very different than another teacher. So these core programs give us that kind of consistency.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to clarify the books verbiage there. Also, on the first slide, you made reference to that all building and department budgets have been either maintained or decreased. Would the board be able to get copies, be able to see these detailed
Sure,
building budgets? And
absolutely.
yeah, it's a little hard to make a decision on a budget this large with one page. So some more breakdown would give us a more informed decision on our votes.
Sure.
Thank you.
May I ask Rita some more questions? In regards to the everyday math consumables, is that where the 172,000 comes in? How many grades are involved with the everyday math?
K to 5.
Okay, so all 4 elementary schools are getting consumables for everyday math, and that's the expense for the 172?
No, the 172 would be all of it, any updated materials that the company has created, but for the most part, it's the consumables, it's the access to the online lessons, the access to all of the materials and resources.
Okay,
So it's not as expensive as it would be if we were purchasing it brand new, because we already have some of the stuff, like we already have the manipulatives. So it's really just extending it for the next 3 years. So it's a one-time, I believe, purchase of 172. And so if you want to divide that by 3, that's really what it's costing us each year.
So obviously we can come back to talk about curriculum another time since we're on the budget discussion, but I just want to verify. So if this is a 3-year contract that we agree to, that's going to be our math program for the next 3 years.
Correct. And again, we could switch math programs, but in my opinion, it is way too hard for a teacher to try to implement a brand new reading program and a brand new math program in the same year. I could purchase everyday math for 1 year, but it's more expensive to do it that way than it is to do it for 3 years. I can certainly give you that figure, and we can continue to use everyday math next year so that teachers, I don't even have the professional development days to be able to properly prepare them to implement 2 new programs in 1 year.
No, that wouldn't be fair
So
to
I
them.
can certainly give you that price, but it costs more per year to do it for 1 year than it does for 3.
Yeah. What about the updated teacher manuals and things? So do they give you options from these curriculum companies, say not to purchase the new updated versions and just stick with what you have in that way to reduce costs? Do they give you multiple options like plans?
No, they don't. It's a bundle. And I can give you a breakdown of where that 172 comes from when it's time. And you will actually when it's time for you to approve that contract. So I can get you a breakdown to what exactly the 172 and the 308 gives us.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. So, and then my other question in regards to the student assistant programs that we were previously funding with the federal grants. So I heard that some of those programs went away. Can we get a list of all of them and then see which ones have been taken off the plan?
We're all using them this year. Some of them we won't be using for next year, and I can certainly give you that list. Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you.
As you update and get a more detailed itemized list, it might be beneficial to explain a little bit or maybe pull out the curriculum, because there's a line item for curriculum, security, backup, and storage software, and then there's the line item for the books.
You actually will see that in the building budgets. It'll all be detailed in the building budgets.
Oh, because the curriculum is budgeted per building, and then the book line item is for those 2 specific
Yeah, it's
programs.
Yep, you'll see
Okay,
right
I
the
think
detail.
that might, maybe
Yep.
that's kind of where we could iron
Sure.
out the confusion. Because books is more like curriculum, because it's an all-encompassing.
Right,
thing. So
absolutely,
that
understood.
would be helpful.
Sure.
Could we have Mr. Fluke speak to the equipment for facilities?
Absolutely.
How's everybody doing this evening?
How are you?
Good, thanks. So we put in the budget for two vehicles. The two vehicles that would be replacing are both 25 years old. Uh, both of them have very high maintenance costs. The one is up around $7,000. It's a 99 2500 pickup that's two-wheel drive, and the other is a 99 Super Duty that has 168,000 miles on it. The last new vehicle that the district purchased for the maintenance department, which also takes care of the plowing, was 2017. So we have a very aging fleet. And I believe at one of the previous board meetings, Mrs. Whitmer actually brought up that we had high cost when it came to repairs on those, and that is correct, just because our fleet is very old. Just kind of to go through it, we have three that are from 1999, one from 2002, 2005, and 2010, and the newer ones are we have 2013, two 2013 models, and a 2017 model. So it's to the point now where we're putting so much money in the maintenance where the cost of the vehicle, we're outweighing that big time. And what will happen eventually is we just had this happen. Our actual courier van did not pass inspection. To get it to pass inspection, it was over $4,000 to fix it, and the van's value was $500. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to put that kind of money in a vehicle that's only worth $500. We do have a new replacement coming for that, a box truck, which is a replacement of a box truck we had from 1993. That's one of the items we actually sold in municipal this summer. So that's kind of where it comes down. And those vehicles are also used for plowing the schools, the parking lots, and all the schools. So they're used hard when we plow snow with them, and then they're exposed to salt too also with that.
So how many vehicles are we using for plow?
Right now we have, well, with the two that are down, we have 7, but 6 of them are for plowing. So we have 6 available maintenance vehicles to plow right now.
Okay, that seems like a lot of vehicles for plowing. Is there a way to reduce the amount of vehicles that are needed? Just to throw that out there. I don't know what you guys use all like the vehicles for.
5. I just want to check my count here. Actually, I have 6 vehicles that plow. I don't know if familiar with plowing, but it takes multiple vehicles, and usually we have 6 buildings. So with the high school being very large and the middle school, I mean, we have lots of things to plow. I don't think the reduction in vehicles and plows would be wise. If 1 or 2 of those would go down during a storm, we wouldn't get done until, like, if we went on a 2-hour delay, there would not be enough plows out there to get the school open on a 2-hour delay. It wouldn't be feasible.
Are those plow trucks used for other
Yes.
things when they're not plowing?
Absolutely, they're
Throughout
used.
the rest of the school year?
Yes, they're used for the maintenance staff to go between buildings and make repairs on the district buildings. They're used by the grounds department also to go around to take the mowers around and to mow. Any other questions on the vehicles?
Would it be beneficial to have a plowing contract so we don't have the wear and tear on the vehicles?
In my past experience, usually that becomes more.
Okay.
It's more of a cost. Anything that we can do in-house, we usually save a lot of money. And I can give you some examples if you would like on when we do things in-house to when we outsource them. Anytime we outsource anything, whether it's a plumbing, an HVAC job, grounds job, it is always more. In the private industry, the pay scale is a lot higher than it is in the school district.
You don't have to produce any.
Okay. Okay.
I take your
Good.
professional opinion on it.
Yep. Anybody else have any questions about the vehicles?
Well, they mentioned that there was a utility trailer, a mower, and plow equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things need to be replaced?
Yes, the utility trailer, one second, let me pull it up. I believe it is from 1991. It is metal. What's left of it is very rusty. It is not safe. It will not pass inspection either. So we can't use it the way it is. It won't pass the safety inspection. And that is one of the trailers that we use to take stuff just around the district, whether it be a lift or the mowing equipment.
How many trailers do we own?
We have currently 2 trailers in the maintenance department. And the band has 3. Any other questions?
So the mower, the plow equipment, do you try to find any of that used, or you always try to look for new?
It's good you brought that up. So the one vehicle that was bought used was the 1999 Super Duty. That is the one that has 168,000 miles on it. That one, if after the district owned that for about 2 years, to get that inspected and pass inspection, we would be looking between $11,000 and $14,000 because of the extensive body rust on it. So the district only got 2 years out of that piece of equipment, and that was a used piece of equipment. So I would not recommend buying used equipment. A lot of times you're just inheriting someone's problems from before.
Thank you.
Is that item still in the inventory now?
Yes, it is. It is in the inventory now. Yes.
That's the 7.3 diesel, is that it?
No,
Yeah.
that one actually has a V10 gas in it.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay. Yep.
I've got some questions for Mrs. Weaver again. On the iPads, it's listed as 1.7 million,
Yes.
and then there's a $947,000 expense for capital assets, and I have to look at the line here, where it talks about basically what appears to be maintenance for these things. Capital assets payments for copiers, and then MacBooks and iPads. So that's about $2.8 million of expenses, averaging out to about $850 to $900 per student. Do you consider that to be justifiable expense for every student in the district?
I would have to look at the exact details for everything. And I don't know if I would be the right one to make the decision. I think that would have been administration as a whole to determine what's appropriate.
So are we purchasing new iPads every year, or do we use these?
No, it's a
From
4 to
1 year
5
to-
year cycle.
Okay.
So we have a lease currently with Apple, and that's for the total lease price, and it's usually over a 3 or 4 year term. Our MacBooks, we do a 4 year term on those. The student iPads, we do a 3 year, because at the end of the 3rd year term, we can then turn around and sell those devices back and get a substantially more resale value on those devices at that point in time, rather than keeping them for the full 4 years. On the student devices, the teacher MacBooks are on the 4 year cycle, and it just seems like that's kind of the happy medium, where you start running into battery issues. If you go beyond the 4 years, you start running into just wear and tear on the devices that don't work. It takes the devices out of the teacher's hands for an extended period of time. It also takes the devices out of the students' hands, and it causes more headaches for the students and teachers, because they cannot do some of the online resources that they are working with, that we're paying for, if the devices aren't in that ready, usable state. I know right now we're running into issues at the end of our 3rd year with the student iPads, with the cases are starting to have issues, and they're still under warranty now. But once that warranty's at the end of this 3rd year is up, we're going to have to then hopefully, renew that lease, and then get new cases, new iPads. And then we have Apple Care as well, which covers 2 incidents of breakage on those devices a year, which if we don't have that coverage, then we are out the cost to repair those devices as well. So it's one of those, it's a lot of money up front, but once you break it down per the 3 years, and then at the end of that 3rd year, sell the devices back. And we'll have some further numbers with that coming up here in the next couple of board meetings. But I think it's one of those needed expenses, especially when you're seeing what the students are doing with those. And we're doing benchmark testing with the iPads in the classrooms. We're not printing as much, because a lot of the resources are digitally accessible to the students, whether they're here or at home. And they're just very user friendly for the students, all the way from the lower grades up to the higher grades. And it's a very, well-rounded device for everybody.
So since they're on a 3 year, 4 year, or 5 year cycle, let's just use 4 years as the average. So if the cost is roughly $900 a year per MacBook. Yeah,
No, it's not per MacBook. So when you're looking at this, the cost of an iPad that we're paying is about, I think it's $450 that we pay, and that's over a 3 year term. That includes a keyboard case, that includes the extended warranty. So when you divide that across the 3 years that we own it, it's $100 and some change per year, per device. The MacBooks are right around $1,000. So you take that across 4 years, and you're at $250
I'm not
a
great
year.
at math, but I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out. So we have $1.7 million for this year's budget for iPads, $947,000 of payments to maintain these things. That's for 1 year, but we're going to keep that iPad or MacBook for 3 or 4 years, and we're paying that every year. Doesn't that become pretty expensive per unit?
I think this has to do with how the lease is drawn up, with taking our total lease value
Yep.
and then selling the devices back, and then it rolls back into the budget as kind of that budget neutral term that
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver was using.
Yeah, the 1.7 really is, it's a financial statement paper entry. It's not really an expense because you're going to get it on the revenue side and the expense side. It's how you have to record it for GASB purposes, but it's really not, I mean, it's not having any impact on the bottom line. So if you're looking at the bottom line, you should be looking at the capital lease asset payments. That's the bottom line. This is really just a book entry.
So that's the so we should ignore the $1.7 million. Is that what
It's,
you're saying?
yes, because at the end of the day, that doesn't have any impact on whether or not, it doesn't have any impact because we have it in the revenue side too. It's on the revenue and the expenditure side, the exact same amount. It's just for financial statement purpose. It's like GASB 34, which is for fixed assets. It's a paper entry. We have to record fixed assets and depreciation, but it means nothing to the general fund budget. It's just for financial statement presentation.
Okay, so
I think once you see the actual leases, it'll make a little bit more sense, and I can try to work on having something just generally together for you here, and then like the next board meeting or the next month's board meeting, just so you can have an idea of what the total would be over that 3-year term for the iPads, and then the total over the 4-year term for the MacBooks. Just so it's at least something to look at for the year-to-year costs, not necessarily the total term value costs.
okay, so you had on one of the slides, there was $147 and I called you, it said it was $147,000. That was on the sale of the iPads, was that?
Sale of MacBooks and iPads that we would be getting back.
Okay, so that's the revenue side, but on the other side, it's 1.7 million. I'm not reconciling that.
If you go to, I can explain to you the entry. It's just that if you look at the revenue slide, you'll see a $1.7 million as well. So and it describes the exact same capital lease. It's the exact same verbiage on the revenue slide as it is on the expenditure slide.
Okay, so since those cancel each other out,
Correct.
our actual cost is just the contract that
Correct.
we're paying,
Yes,
which is less than $1 million, and that's the
that
947,000.
is correct. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
What about the software that we install on? I mean, we pay for the curriculum and the software that goes on for these kids to utilize over. I know there's probably a contract period, like a couple years or whatever. I mean, do we factor that in and break that down with the cost of the iPads per student?
No, that's done through curriculum's budgeting purposes.
But we wouldn't need that curriculum if we didn't have the iPads, correct?
No, we would probably spend more money in curriculum because we would have to buy physical textbooks for the students to have. So when you buy the digital textbook, you save a significant amount of money because you're not paying for that printed text. They just update the digital content yearly, so that's what you're paying for, but you're not buying a physical textbook that then gets damaged, and some of those textbooks are $400, $500, $600 a piece.
So I understand what you're saying, but maybe I just don't know what all these children are using their iPads for. So are they using their iPads for like a whole subject, like ELA?
Depends on what grade.
What grade?
I mean, in high school, they use it for everything. I mean, everything is on there. They use Schoology and their assignments are there, their tests are there. Now in kindergarten, not as much. There are some of their assessments are there, and certainly there's a lot of apps that they use that reinforce concepts. In third grade, it's a little bit of both. They're using it to create as products to demonstrate their learning. I mean, and I mean this respectfully, but this is 2024. I mean, we can't function without computers. If I were to remove the computers from all of your workplace, what would that look like? It's the same. This is our workplace. This is 2024. We can't function and teach for 2024 without computers. We can't go back to 1970.
And that makes sense. I don't see us going backwards to that extent. I'm just trying in my mind to, put together who's doing what and, where's the cost.
Yeah, and I can
So-
certainly give you that information, but that's a very lengthy conversation because
I
it looks
agree.
very different in
Yeah.
kindergarten than it would in 12th
Sounds
grade.
like a lot.
Yeah. But I'm certainly happy to, I mean, and it's, again, if you visit on our classroom visits, that's a really great opportunity for you to see how they're being used.
Thank you.
Well, that's a lot of money, no matter how you look at it. And this is not really germane to this discussion, but, just rhetorically, when you consider what our success rates are now versus where they were in 1970, are we as effective teaching as we were back then? So maybe that's, we can answer that at maybe another time. It's a
That's
tough question to answer.
It is, and if you're asking with regard to the iPads, we cannot teach without iPads. You are going to put an incredible burden on our classroom teachers if you take that away. Their entire world is wrapped up in their technology, and nor are you going to prepare kids for the outside world. I do encourage you to try to find a job today that works without computers. That's the job you're going to prepare them for. So if you want to prepare them for the workforce, you've got to put technology in their hands. Again, we're 2024 here.
And it also goes back to the instant gratification from the teacher's perspective to see how their work has been, how their classroom teaching has been given out and shown to the students, because they can go back and look at their test scores, they can go back and look at the assessments and see exactly what each student needs. And one thing that textbooks cannot give that the iPads can is, like during ExactPath, it is based upon the student's last answer to the question. It will derive the next question based upon their ability, whereas a textbook, everybody's getting the same exact questions no matter your ability or not. So there's a lot of things said to having the digital tools that you can't do with physical textbooks that we do.
And as I saw in some of the classroom visits, there's the ability to track every single thing that they do
Yeah.
on that iPad, so you know how they got to an answer.
Yes.
So you go back and analyze, well, let's see what you did. Because if you ask a student, they say, I don't remember what I did.
Yeah, they just
You
come
know,
to the answer and it is what it is.
It's either right or wrong. They got it wrong. They don't know how they got it wrong. You can go back, well, this is exactly where you got it. So I see that, there's advantages to some of these things, but, at the end of the day, I think we have to keep our target in mind is how effective are we in teaching the subject matter, whether it's reading or, mathematics, science, whatever it is. And assessment scores, it's not just here. I mean, it's all over the country. They're not what they used to be. I don't know if tests are just harder or what the difference is, but something's not reconciling.
I had a question about the obsolete
Yes.
tech items. Do we get any money from those?
So it depends what we trade in. So like the MacBooks that we get out of a 4-year lease or the iPads that we get in, we will get money for those, and we'll get a decent amount of money for those. Most of the stuff that's on the obsolete listings is been here for 10 plus years and it's not worth keeping around anymore, so we get rid of it, and we usually maybe get a couple dollars for it just as a electronics recycling for recycling the batteries or something like that. But a lot of times we don't get a significant amount of money for the stuff that we recycle in that respect.
Is there a reason we're holding on to it that long?
So if we
Not value?
had to buy devices for everybody in the district, it would be a significantly more money than what we already budgeted here. So a lot of times we'll keep, some of the devices that we're trading in at that 4 years. We'll keep maybe half of that or a little bit less than half of that. Use those for another 4 years into positions that aren't necessarily using their devices frequently. A lot of the paraprofessionals will, get a device so that they can print, they can do access to resources just like the classroom teachers, but they're not using it as heavily as a teacher. So we can use those older devices longer, but usually that's 4, 5, 6, 10 years down the road, and it's to the point where batteries don't work, hinges don't work, screens don't work, and you can only Frankenstein so much stuff together before it's not worth Frankensteining it anymore. So.
And so none of them are worth even donating to.
No, yeah. So we keep it to the point where the wheels are falling off of it. much like the vehicles that Tom was talking about, and it's really not worth. Like you said, we usually try to trade in what we can that's of value. That way we can keep rolling that back into the the purchase price to lower the purchase price down. But a lot of times the older devices that we have that we truly do recycle are not worth anything.
So what age are the students allowed to take this equipment home with them?
So during COVID, we let everybody take their devices home. Now it's pretty much third grade on up is taking their devices home. A lot of times the elementaries and the elementary principals can speak to this, but I think it's third grade through fifth grade right now is hit or miss, depending if they're taking it home. It depends upon their assignments. And really sixth grade through 12th grade is every day. But it's really dependent upon the assignments at the lower grades.
So that represents hard use on the equipment then?
Yes, yeah, and that's why if you keep it beyond that, and that's why it makes sense to lease, because it constantly builds in that buffer in your budget, so you know exactly where you're going to be at. Because what happened here over the last 10 or 20 years is they would buy stuff but never budget to replace it, and then you're always trying to budget. Now we got to buy $300,000 worth of equipment this year that we weren't in the budget for. So if we just budget it in, we're always replacing it with newer stuff. We can trade the older stuff in, make more money off of it, then bring it back in, help offset those lease payments. That way it takes that dollar amount down. Now the last time we traded the iPads in, I think we got a check for like $570,000 back. So to offset that $1 million lease payment, that would so that drives your cost of ownership down per year. But I can't say that's what we're going to get this year because of the way the cost of devices are, and everybody bought devices during COVID. So now they're all going to be trading them back in at the same time. So that obviously, supply and demand at that point will draw that price down. But that's why you keep just recycling those devices. That way you're always, staying level with the budget and keeping devices that are actually working.
Okay, so can you speak to curriculum software as well, or is that somebody else's department?
Depends upon what curriculum software it is.
Well, there's a category here: curriculum, security, backup, storage software. So the curriculum software and everything to store our data and all that, the backup security, we're talking about, $1 million.
Most of that I think is probably out of curriculum. I'd have to actually see the budget.
So does curriculum get updated on the equipment every single year or every semester, or?
So as far as the curriculum purchases, that's like through everyday math. But do we know exactly what
I have a list. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I certainly can get a breakdown of what makes up that number.
Yeah, because most of that's not in my budget. I think maybe $100,000 of that's in my budget. But so we can get you the definitive numbers on those.
Right. I know we're being nitpicky here.
No, it's
the
fine.
biggest numbers in our budget.
Yeah.
You can do virtually nothing about. Okay. So if you're going to scrutinize a budget, you got to scrutinize the numbers that you think you might have some impact on.
Mhm.
And in order to do that, we have to understand what we're talking about.
Makes perfect sense.
We're not coming out of the education world. We're coming out of the citizenry as directors. This is a brand new board. We're going to ask questions that we really want to understand, because we don't want to have negative consequence because we were driving so hard towards a singular goal of reducing the budget. So who would be the best one to speak to the York County School of Technology tuition budget?
I mean, I have a copy of it that was provided.
So that went up 15% this year? Is that?
That's
the
what they're
proposal?
estimating based on the a number of the students of enrollment, yes.
So it's due to increased enrollment
Yes,
there,
8 additional students.
not due to increased cost.
The
for-
costs are minimal. I want to say it's 3 to 4% increase in costs, but it is due to 8 additional students.
Okay, so is that apportioned out to the district based on how many students we're sending?
That's correct, yes.
So the more we send, the more that number goes up.
That's correct.
Okay. So, I mean, there's a good and bad about that. The more we get to send there is great. That we toured that facility beginning of this week, and it is an amazing facility. I can see why students want to go there and parents want to get their children into that school. It's incredible. Um, but the tuition cost associated with that, is it cheaper to do CTE here, or is it more cost effective to do it there? I guess that's one question. And I know that there's so many things that they teach there that we couldn't even approach teaching here, but dollar for dollar, is it cheaper to keep somebody here in CTE if they want to learn horticulture or something like that?
I
Something
certainly
that
can
we
do an
all-
analysis. I hate to speak without knowing all the data and the facts, so I can't say yes or no.
Mhm.
But I certainly can look into the expenses and the details and come back with an answer.
Okay,
Also, that cost includes transportation.
right. And we bear all that
York
cost.
Tech, no, York Tech
They do? Okay.
transports all of the students at York Tech. So you're not comparing apples to apples if you compare our CTE budget to that budget.
Right, okay.
So it's really hard to compare.
It is, okay. Any other questions?
Yes,
Director Meese. Oh,
go ahead. go
Director
ahead.
Meese and then Director Miller.
Mrs. Weaver, the increase in interest earnings, the 360,000, do we move money around monthly, or is it like a quarterly thing? Like, how do you, or do you have guidance and help in?
I have a cash flow analysis, and it's based on when we've received the subsidies, when the taxes come in, um, the average amount of payroll we have, when we have 2 pays or 3 pays, the average AP. So there's a lot of factors that are involved in the process.
The money that we have not part of our like everyday cash flow,
Right.
but just money that we have sitting
Yes.
aside.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm talking about. So do you invest that? You
yes.
change that?
Yes, I ladder it, yes.
So how do you know, like, does the LIU help you with?
No, I do it myself.
You look and see what the best rates are and how to, okay.
I've been doing it for 22 years. I'm
Yeah.
pretty good at it.
Yeah. Well, we know that that was lacking previously, and we missed out on an opportunity to really earn money. So I have a lot of confidence in the fact that that you keep up with that.
I do,
So I was just
absolutely.
curious how you did that. Like, is it a monthly thing or is it a
It's a
quarterly?
rolling form. It's a
You just
different-
kind of,
you just know, you obviously have to take into account, like I said, when you have higher months of AP, when there's certain things that are due, maybe something that's due on a yearly basis as opposed to a monthly basis. Especially in the beginning of the year, because a lot of items are due in the beginning, for the entire year in
Right.
July. Or again, like when you have 2 pays versus 3 pays, when our subsidy, when basic ed's coming in, because that's a large amount, when we're getting property tax, like there's times where all of those subsidies come in, and so you just have to compare what's coming in to what's going out,
so,
kind of like you do in your own budget.
so how do you, for example, where is our money currently invested? Like, where are we getting that interest earnings? Is it money markets? Is it bonds? Like, how are we getting that?
It's CDs and money markets. We are,
Okay.
because of the fact that we are a school district, we are very tied in where we can and cannot invest.
Okay.
So we deal with very specific banks that cater towards not-for-profits or for school districts. So if
Okay.
you look at the treasurer's report, you can see I list out the interest rates every single month and the amount of money that's in there, so you can see exactly where the money's sitting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question. What is mainstreaming tuition to other students, other districts, I'm sorry?
What it is that the LIU we bill other districts for students from the LIU that are here. Every district does it. So that's what we call it, mainstreaming.
So we have students from other districts coming here,
Correct.
and so we are getting money from other districts.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Uh,
Budget presentation?
Other capital assets, 315,000. What's encompassed in that?
I can look. I don't know off the top of my head, so I hate to speak out of turn, but I certainly can look and get you guys a list.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're doing real well. We're on the first agenda item still. Publics, hopefully you'll stick with us through the night. All right, You have anything else for us, Mr. Bolt?
I think there's a maybe question about the RWAN contract at some point, but I think we can get to that once that comes up. I think it's one of the further items down there on the list, but we can cover that once we get there.
Which one was that again?
The RWAN, I think,
In the consent.
one of the
Oh,
contracts,
okay.
but we can cover that once we get
Okay,
there.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. All right. Okay, the next agenda item is the 2024-2025 high school course selection guide.
Good evening, everyone. I am Jennifer Fazik. As many of you are new faces seen around, I am the principal of the high school. Right now, Mike Krumka, one of the assistants, is coming around with two different things for you. I think for what it is that we're going to discuss, I've heard some of the directors say before, it's tough to see everything online. So I printed out the course selection guide and made it easier so that you can flip through it and stay with me as we are going. And I also provided a list of changes and why those changes are. So it's not all by memory and trying to take notes for everything that you are about to hear. Shouldn't give me things, I'll break them. The course selection guide that we are looking at is what the students will use as we go through the course selection process that will begin here in February once this is approved. This is what allows our students to choose from a menu of options for what we offer. And when we're looking at it, there's several courses that are in there, but we're also trying to combat losing students to cyber schools that can put any course that they want online and show the students. So we're trying to retain our students, keep them, and provide them with viable options that are going to help them as they go into their post-secondary career, whether that's college, a trade school, or entering the workforce. So there's a lot of different categories that are in here. What I'd like to do is kind of take you through one by one the pages and the changes. The course selection guide, we use the same one year to year to year. So as curriculum is being approved by the board and our courses are approved, they go in the course selection guide. Every year as departments, we look at this and we look at what changes, if they need to be changed, and why those changes are. What I'm bringing you today is just what those changes are. I am not bringing you any new curriculum, nor asking for any new classes to be approved in this. There is a change to an honors and an AP, which we will talk about, but nothing in this is being presented as a new class that we have done in years past to change. In fact, some courses have been eliminated, which I will highlight as we are going through. So if we start on this, the first thing you see obviously is your table of contents that tells you where you can flip to. If you're using the electronic version, we do have table of contents built in that you can click and just go to each individual one. First couple of pages as you go through explain the administrators, the counseling that we have, what that course selection process looks like. And it is quite tedious. And right now with the schedule that we're on, I'm lucky to be done with course selection in June. And that means getting our students' schedules, finalizing them, and getting them to them in August. Some schools, they have them in May. I'm still, as we're doing it, and the counselors, we're still functioning on a day-to-day basis with all the workload that we need. We don't just pull ourselves from the building and just do scheduling. So that's why it takes a little bit of time to get through. Once the students choose or choose their courses, they go into the counselors review them. Then it comes to me and we look at what are the amounts of students that want to take a class, what is feasible by how many sections teachers can teach, and what are our core classes, and then we look at our elective classes. It's a very delicate balance to figure out what's going to run and what's not going to run, because we do need to think of our higher achieving students that may not have as many course requests as there are for lower level classes, but we still need to be able to educate all of our students and provide the opportunities, which again makes it a little bit difficult. Then it goes into the process of actually building the schedule, determining where those classes can fall, that the most students can get them, but there's always conflicts as we're going through. But if you would like more of the course selection process, I'd be happy to take you through that and explain it. It is quite complicated. It's a big logistic puzzle, which is why I like it. Continuing on, the first thing that you're going to see is on page 5. Here's where the first change is, and it doesn't affect us for next year, but I thought it was important to put that in now. The new bill that went through the Senate for the financial literacy class has been approved. We're still waiting for more information. I'll be waiting for Dr. Hauk when she goes to her curriculum sessions to find out, because it says for the 26-27 school year when that will be implemented, it has to be at least a half credit. We already have a 1 credit course, but we're looking fiscally, what's the best way to teach that? What does the board want that to be? Then we have to look at, is that our class of 2027 that is graduating, that it's the first one that they're responsible for, or is that with our freshmen that come in the 26-27 school year? So we're still waiting to hear that information, and the board will then have to decide, do we stay at 24 credits and take this as part of our electives? Is this something that we will add to the credits? So I wanted to try to preempt and put that information in there, because it is something that we will need to start thinking about and talking about and deciding what we want to do for those students. So that's what you see on page 5, is just making sure that we know what's coming down the road. Again, it will not affect next year's graduating class or next year's classes that the students will be taking. Continue going through on pages 6 and 7. There aren't any changes, but you're looking at with Act 158 that went in for the class of 23. These are the new pathways that we have to make sure that we get students to be able to graduate, which I'll put a little plug in here, Mr. Benton. Having a CTE school allows our students to be able to meet that pathway through the 3rd pathway and allow our students to meet what the state is requiring to go through. So I'll just put that little plug there. If you continue on, pages 8 and 9 is just our grading, class weighting. No changes there. Again, please stop me anytime if you have questions as we are going through. On pages 10, 11, this is talking about our career and technical education programs, to describe it to our parents, the different programs that we have, how you get involved, what it takes to be able to do. And again, if you were in the electronic document, all of those are clickable links that you can go and find out what that pathway looks like on the program of studies for it. On page 12, this is our academic leveling. From advanced placement to our academic levels. We do have some levels that are below academic, because we due to IEPs, due to student abilities, do have some students that are functioning at a lower level, but those classes are much smaller. This is where we promote our students to be able to go through and choose one of these levels to make them most successful for post-secondary. And at the bottom of page 12, we do offer independent study. I'm kind of going through this one by one because many of you are new. I want to make sure that you understand. Our independent studies, let's say that we have like AP Euro history. It's a class that we very rarely run because of the amount of students that request it, but we might have 1 or 2 that really want that. We have a teacher that has the credentials to teach it. They might sign up for an independent study so that they can get that while a teacher has another class. They work on it more independently than they do with direct instruction as they would in our other classes, so we can still meet those higher level students' needs without running classes of 5 or less, which we know we don't want to do. That's how we come around that in the independent studies. On pages 13 into 14, it talks about our dual enrollment. We are adding all the time. I shouldn't say all the time, but each year we're trying to add more schools, more opportunities for our students, because if you were available for the November board meeting, when I had students come in and present AP dual enrollment college in the high school, it is considerably cost effective for a student and parent to do it on this side of graduation versus on the other side of graduation. So as you had said, President Conley, that we're looking for being cost effective and what is the effect to the parents. This is another way that it affects how much that they are spending out of pocket to educate their students. So we can do and help some on this side of what it
I
was.
appreciate you addressing that. Does the school system here get a benefit out of that too, besides the cost savings to the parent, to the student?
I would say, and Dr. Houck, back me up, I would say no to dual enrollment. It is not a cost effective. The only way it's cost effective is the students are still in our books, but we're not teaching or paying for the classes. So it does reduce the number of students that are in our actual classes without costing us any money. It's at the expense of the parents.
Okay.
On page 14 is NCAA eligibility, which is important if any of our students want to go on to be athletes at the collegiate level. It's also, if students follow this type of program, it can benefit for them one of the pathways too if they meet the requirements for NCAA, because it's a standard where everybody has to have these certain classes and score proficient in those classes. So that's in every high school will find NCAA eligibility. On page 15 is a list of all of our honors, college and high school classes, and advanced placement classes. This is a quick look for those parents, those students that are trying to push their students to be more rigorous, to take more rigorous classes of study, and this is part of our comprehensive plan that we are trying to promote and push our students into higher courses and get them to achieve more. Just a little side note to, you had asked, are we better or worse? I can't answer that, but I can tell you one of the things that we are facing now that when I started my career 25 years ago is apathy. Getting students engaged. The education in the home is not near as important as it was 25, 30 years ago. They have to go, and that's not all homes. I don't mean to sound that way, but more and more, they don't see the benefit of going to school and what we can provide for them and taking advantage of what we have in the high schools. So apathy in terms of student engagement is something that we are battling, especially in the secondary schools. So that's one of the ways we promote is how do we get there? How do you get to these courses? How do you get to where it's going to help you in the future? On pages 16 and 17 is something we did add this year. Last year, what we had was just saying, okay, if you're a freshman, you are going to take 8 credits. You might take this first semester. You might take this second semester. What we have done here is give an academic and an accelerated route, showing that if you're going on the academic, here's the courses that you need. Here's what to choose from. And if you're accelerated and trying to reach those higher courses, it tries to provide that mapping of how you get to those courses. So if you look on page 17, you'll see when you end the math, you're looking at AP calculus. That's where we want students to get as far as math. So how do they get there each year without doubling up? So that's why we put those 2 pages in there on pages 16 and 17.
May I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
I'm sorry. Thank you for that. This page is helpful, and I was looking to see if there's one for the CTE program. Do you think that might be helpful to those interested to see the layout just like this?
We could. They are listed, and that's most of our students use the electronic. We don't print them out. And on the bottom of page 10, back me up if I'm correct, Mr. Benton, if you click on any of those that say accounting technology, business office management, or the engineering technology, that will take you to an exact prescribed list of the classes that you need to be able to take, the scope and sequence.
So this whole course selection guide is available on the website?
Yes.
Okay, how do they get there?
I don't know the pathway off the top. I'm sorry. I'd have to go and I could get you there. I could have Dustin or Brad. But we go through it with the students when we're going through of how to.
Okay.
I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I do not know. But if you go in, and these are in our documents that are resources. Thank you, Dr. Houck. I don't have a computer.
I'm actually looking it up right now.
Thank
so-
you.
I'm too.
And then I'll interrupt you later and tell you where it is. Thank you.
Top just hit about Dover area high school.
There you go. When you hit
Okay.
about, it comes up.
Is it under the enrollment tab? Is that,
Yeah, if you go to the Dover Area School District and then you choose the high school, there is a what do they call that? A bar, a navigation bar at the top that says About DAHS. If you hover over that, there is a link to the high school course selection guide.
Oh.
So right on the high school page.
Okay. And you're saying once you get to that, that the scope and sequence for CTE, they're hyperlinks.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And very prescribed for exactly what that scope and sequence is that they need to be able to take. Could they be printed out and put in? Absolutely, they could. Our parents look at it a little bit more than our students do, but they could be put in there. But they are listed within those links.
how many, just spitballing it, how many of the advanced placement courses are independent study?
Maybe 3 or 4.
That's all?
That it's not a whole lot. It's your AP Human Geography, AP Euro History, a lot in your social studies that get into very specific pieces. Occasionally AP Calc. We have had students before when the course did not run. We didn't have enough to run it. They have taken AP Calc as an independent study. But they would be the majority of them. We do have other courses that are higher in level, like Anatomy and Physiology 3, Veterinary Science in the CTE world. I'm trying to think a couple off my head that they do take independent studies that aren't necessarily AP classes.
So dovetailing it with the previous topic, so if they're doing AP Calc, this is not an easy course.
Correct.
So the software that's on the iPads or MacBooks, whatever it is, does that present them with a lesson plan and?
So they use Schoology. Each teacher will use Schoology. Each teacher will post their notes, all of the resources that they need to be able to use, what the assignment, what the agenda is. That say you missed a class for whatever reason, you would go in and be able to see everything that you missed, all of the resources, the links to the text that they need to be able to see. Some of our teachers even have videos in where they can go back and see what it is that they are doing. Links to other resources. That's just one way that they use the iPads for that material. But then they have a link to their textbook as well that they can go in and see everything rather than, I don't know if you've seen an AP textbook, but they're about this thick and weigh about 15 pounds. It seems so that they're not carrying those things around. And then their notes that they take in class store right in, and they pull them right up as they're talking about it.
So that's for an independent, all this activity by the teacher would be going on even for an independent
Yes.
student.
An independent study student, usually the course is built in Schoology, and they're put on a prescribed schedule that you need to do this by this date, check in on this date. Sometimes they work in the classroom, sometimes they work in our open classrooms, and students have to have permission by the teacher, their counselor, and administrator to be able to take one of those independent studies. Okay, moving on, we start to get into, starting on page 18, our listing of our courses. Starting with the agricultural science, which falls into our CTE courses. Each one is listed by the number that they would use to request the course, how many credits it is. It also tells you the recommended grade level for these. And sometimes we go out of those grade levels where it makes sense. Not all students fit in an exact progression. And it tells you the GPA multiplier. That's important because our classes that are honors, college in the high school, or AP have a higher GPA multiplier. So that means we have seniors right now that are, well, really, if you look at the top 10%, have over a 4.0 because of taking these multiplier courses. Much different than taking a regular level course. So students look for these to boost their GPA for colleges. As you go through on page 20, Two changes that were made for 876 Horticulture 2. That changed from 11th and 12th grade to just 12th grade. The reason for that is, and that's what you'll see on the second sheet that you have there, we're reserving that class for seniors in the CTE program, and the class will be a NOCTI prep class for the horticulture students. And NOCTIs are the exams they take at the end of the CTE program for certification, right, Mr. Benton? Okay. I'm getting my vocabulary. It's taken me a couple years, but I'm getting there in the CTE world. Also on page 20, 878, landscape design went from just 12th to 11th and 12th graders, so it opened it up to juniors. And the change was made to match the 2 years of the horticulture program length. So it's not just one; they can take them both years in whatever order they need to do so. Turning the page on page 21, several of the courses that you'll see here, again, going with those rigorous courses of studies, trying to get our students to finish a pathway, finish the program, and still attend to those GPA multipliers. We have made the end of course progression classes a higher GPA because they're finishing it the whole way, which equates to maybe an honors class in or an AP class in science or social studies or English. CTE did the same thing. So on 886, Advanced Ag Mech, that went from a 1.0 multiplier to a 1.1 multiplier, which is the same as our college and the high school and our honors classes. Sorry, yes.
So when that multiplier changes, does the actual rigor of the class change?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in this case, the rigor was already there. We are just acknowledging what our students are doing that we have not in the past
But
to do.
in some classes, the rigor and maybe the syllabus is changing.
Yes.
Because the multiplier is changing.
Yes.
Or vice versa. Okay.
Yes, when it gets to honors level, yes. Like I said, in most of these CTE, I can't say that anything was necessarily changed. It's just giving our students the benefit of what they're doing. When you go through 4 years of Ag Mech and you're taking that final course, we wanted to give our students the same benefit that our students that are in that final progression and taking that AP Calc class. Yes, you can't even equate because what the students can do out in the construction and Ag Mech, I don't know that maybe our AP Calc students can do. And what our AP Calc students are doing in class, they're not going to be. It's a completely different pathway. So recognizing the different talents and skills of our students.
And if I can add, I did this in my previous high school where I increased the course weight. We have some of our kids who are chasing that GPA.
Mm-hmm.
And at times they were resistant to take CTE courses because it didn't have the weight and it would hurt their GPA. And those courses, by the time they get to that 4th level, those are no joke. Like, those are rigorous. You need talent. And if we have kids who are aspiring engineers, there are a lot of college careers that require colleges that could benefit from the CTE courses, but some of the kids weren't willing to take them because the courses weren't weighted. So we are matching the course to the rigor so that kids are getting the GPA that they deserve.
Mm-hmm. Also on page 21, 887, natural resource management. Again, we changed the years and this matches the scope and sequence that we are going through. It goes into that balance too of what grade levels can take which classes so we can ensure that all of our students are getting classes and there's enough electives for them to be able to take. Also on page 881, on page 21, 890, the supervised ag experience. This is their SAE for students that are in FFA. I know a lot of letters. This is for them to be able to work from freshman to senior year to be able to complete the program that they need as part of FFA. On page 22, 895, Introduction to Ornamental Horticulture. This is a college and the high school course, and it's also a end of year or end of program course, so it's weighted as an honors course, and that was changed from a 1.0 to a 1.1 multiplier. On page 23 starts our business courses, and you can see the class that I referred to in the beginning that we are looking at right now is the 610 Financial and Career Explorations. That would be one way to satisfy the new bill that is coming forth. Again, it's just one of those things that we can talk about. What we do have a course, 610 Financial and Career Explorations. But on that page, if you continue to, I'm sorry, in that area, turning to page 24, 651 Accounting 3, that was another class end of course progressions that we changed to a 1.1 multiplier. In 660 Microsoft Office, and this spans the page in your table that you're looking at, we changed the description of Microsoft Office, not necessarily because the curriculum has changed, but we're no longer, if you look at it, using Microsoft Office 2016. So we updated it to the current programs and the current resources that the students are using to get with the times a little bit. I don't know, it's hard to believe that 2016 was 8 years ago already, but it's moving quickly. On page 25, 684, it's no longer there, but if you were looking at the old one that's currently on the website, the Introduction to Business, that was a course that was eliminated. It's a course that we're no longer offering. It's not needed in the pathways, so we pulled out that Introduction to Business course. On page 28, which moves into commercial and advertising art, which again, still in our CTE realm of classes. On page 28, multimedia 4 changed from a regular multiplier to a 1.1, again, end of progression course. On page 29, we did the same thing for 850, 851, 852, which is graphics 3, 4, and 5. All three of those are on the scope and sequence as being end of progression. They don't, if I'm correct, Mr. Benton, they don't necessarily need to take 3, 4, and 5. Some do, not everybody does, so we back it up to graphics 3 for where they are. Sorry, I lost my place. Yes, those three were changed to 1.1 multipliers, and that ends on page 30. Page 31 in computer science, 945 IT Essentials A. This is like Microsoft Office. The wording was changed just to reflect on the actual programs and what they are doing, because there's IT Essentials A, IT Essentials B, and it splits up between those courses. So that's what happened between 945 and 948 there. And I did put the exact wording on there so you can see the differences that are there. On page 32, 952 and 954, which are Introduction to Cybersecurity and Routing and Switching, both of those are end of progression and were changed to a 1.1 multiplier. Jumping ahead to page 37. In page 37, 951 Honors Digital Electronics is a course that was eliminated. It is no longer needed in the in the engineering program. So that was pulled, that if we don't need that course in that CTE pathway, there's no use, or we didn't feel that it needed to continue to be offered. That's our CTE courses. If you start on page 39 in English, this starts our other departments that are not CTE. In each one of our core for English, math, science, social studies, you will find a chart, as you do here for English, that gives that academic route, that college route, and what that accelerated route is of courses, progressions for students, so they can again make that decision of how they get from a freshman to a senior to the classes that they want to be in. Couple of changes here in English on page 40 for our 115 Honors English 2 class. We have added a summer reading list, again, to up the rigor. This is normal for honors and for AP courses to have summer reading. We got away from it in COVID because we weren't able to get them the materials, so we're getting back to where we needed to be and getting them back into it. And the students, we try to show them in the very beginning, this is something you're going to have to do over the summer, even if it's a second semester class, because everything is due at the beginning of the year. On page 41, there were some changes here to our levels of English 3 and English 4. What has happened, if you look at that progression I had in that flow chart for English, which was on page 39, the students come into their freshman year and they can take 3 different levels of English. That happens again in their sophomore year, but then what we noticed is by the time they got into their junior year, there was really only 2 levels and options for them. They could take the academic level or they could go into AP. What that left us with when we did that is when you look at English 3, the range of students that were taking 133 went from students that really should have been in AP classes to students that were coming out of co-taught classes from English 2. For a teacher, that's very difficult to give the skills and differentiate for what students need to be able to do. So we pulled off and implemented 131 131 English 3 to serve as for students that need that functional reading, functional writing, and for teachers to determine which students need to take that course. We are not offering it as anybody who wants to take a lower level, here's an easier way out. That's not what it's meant to do. That's the opposite of what we're trying to do. But for students that need it and we need to provide those reading and writing skills, it's for the teacher to be able to concentrate more on what their skills are. And then we called 133 the academic level. We did the same thing for senior English. 141 will be more of that functional English class, where 143 is more of the academic going into college, post-secondary, and not necessarily being at the AP level. Did I explain that well enough? That's hard without a diagram. I'm a very visual person. And then the only other changes were in the elective courses. College and the high school. We did make that just for seniors. AP Lang and college and the high school teach very much the same thing. So if they take AP Lit their junior year, then their senior year, they have either AP Lang or college in the high school. We had some students that were taking college in the high school their junior year and then taking AP Lang their senior year and finding they were kind of taking a little bit of the same course. College in the high school, if you get credits to hack, it's a different cost. And then the AP exam is the AP classes are when they have to take the AP exam. So we're just trying to help students to make more educated choices of what they need. On page 43, and when you get into the English electives, on course 151, journalism, we wanted to specify to this for students that this is a heavily, for journalism, it's a lot of writing. We think we would know that, but not all students do. So we have some students who are deficient in this due to disabilities, due to it's not what they want to do. It's not just walking around and playing reporter. There's a whole lot of writing that goes into it. So we ran into where we think that it would be better to have recommendation from their English teachers to make sure that they are able to take this elective because it is one of our more rigorous electives that are available. On page 44, film studies, we changed the course description, did not change the curriculum. If you look at the old course description that was there, our students don't relate to it near as much as the new one. We're trying to entice, because this can also be a humanities course that students that have to take, and this is one of their options. So we just reworded a little bit to try to entice some students to want to be able to take it and give a clearer picture in their words of what the course was about. And again, that's one of our electives. Or page 46 starts in our math. You'll see that exact same chart that you saw in English. Not a whole lot of changes to math. This is where I said I was not bringing you new curriculum, except for the fact that this year is the first year they are offering AP Pre-Calc. That has not been a course prior to this. This is new in the AP world. You'll notice that we don't run AP and honors at the same time. It's too hard for students to choose which way to go, and we want to push into those more rigorous classes as well. So we would like to change from honors pre-calc, which is our curriculum here, to AP pre-calc, which is the College Board, and then students are matched the same as they are. They're learning the same curriculum in every other high school that takes on the AP pre-calc because it is prescribed by the College Board, as all of our other AP courses are. So that is the one change. It's the same things they're learning at a more rigorous level, and they have the ability to take that AP exam. And the reason you don't see numbers that is because it's not been a course before. We would have to change that number and put a number in there. And that was on page 49. We also took lab math on page 49 and removed the prerequisite course of Algebra 2. Lab math is an elective math. Our students need 3 credits in math in order to graduate. Depending on the path that they're coming in, most of our students come in and take year-long algebra, which is a 2-credit course. And then they need 1 more credit, which is geometry. But we try to encourage them to take their 3rd math, science, or social studies and continue that in their senior year to take. Lab math is one of those that they may not have had algebra 2 to be able to take it, but it's more a real-world functional description of what happens with math. And we're trying to build that back up. That's a course that hasn't necessarily been run, but we're finding students are getting in, some of them a little bit over their head in some of the more rigorous classes. So we want to give them options that they can take without having to move into that world and still keep their math courses going. On page, if you continue in music on page 52, on page 54, a previous class that we had taken out of the course of studies was music technology. We hadn't had the students that needed it. That has been a board-approved course that was in the past. It is not anything new that we are doing. We just have more students that are asking about that course. So Mr. Bradshaw and Mrs. Roberts asked if we could put that back in for students to be able to have that. I can't say if it will run or not. It will depend on how many students actually sign up for it against the other ones, but they've been taking music theory. So now there's a section of students that may need another music course option to be able to take. And finally, it's not actually in the book, but in the science section that was in there, we eliminated honors organic chemistry. It's not a class that's regularly taught, and our AP chemistry covers those concepts that are in there. So there's no sense to just specialize in honors organic chemistry when AP chemistry fulfills the information that they need. That's all of the changes that are in. If you continue through, you will see the social studies curriculum that is in there. It also gets into the visual arts, which is all of our art classes. And continuing through to the end of the document, we talk about our online courses, cyber courses that students can take in the summer at their expense. This is not us providing it for them. And senior privileges. Senior privileges are when our seniors can take either first period or last period and have a class where they don't have to come to the high school. Most high schools have something like this, if not an open campus. And this does help our numbers because it's less classes that I need to run because late arrival in the morning is usually about 30 some kids. So that's a class right there that I would need to have an additional class for them to be able to take if they didn't. In the afternoon, we have upwards of 45 to 60 that go out. That would be 2 to 3 classes that I would need to have on the books for them to be able to take if they did not do the senior privilege. That was a lot.
It was a lot. It was good. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a question, sorry.
No.
So if I take geometry or honors geometry, am I in the class at in the same room, same
No.
teacher? It's two different.
It's
Okay.
different courses, yes.
Okay.
And those, geometry is one of our required courses, so those classes are full. What we do is when I'm looking at class sizes, if I have 150 kids that need to take it, I look at what is the class size, looking at a number of about, I try to keep it about 24. 28 to 30 is where you max out in the classroom. I still need to leave room for students that would move in to be able to take it. So when we're running honors or we're running regular level academic geometry, they're full classes that are being taken at different times. Some same teacher, some different teacher.
Jen, you do have classes that double up sometimes though.
Yes, I do have some classes that do double up, especially in CTE. There are some, yes. Sorry, I was.
Geometry was probably a bad one to
Example,
ask about.
okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, okay.
Yes, we do have, for instance, sorry, let me shuffle through my papers real here. I can give you,
I mean, one off the top of my head is the yearbook class, right? You write
yes, all three of the yearbook classes run together.
In the same
3D
period.
art 1, 2, and 3 all run together. It's where the students are in the progression. They all run in one. Our graphics classes, some of them, graphics 1 and 3 run together.
Okay, I guess I was concerned, like with honors, like is the teacher trying to meet all those levels?
No.
Okay, that was my.
No, our honors and our academic level, or if it's lower at a co-taught level, they are not trying to teach those levels at the same time.
That was really what I was trying to ask. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. Mm-hmm.
For the sciences pathways,
Mm-hmm.
why is there not an AP course for the most rigorous pathway?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay, page, I lost my page.
Science is on 59. I just happened to flip there. I don't have it memorized.
I think you're talking about the academic versus accelerated pathways.
Yes, the accelerated route doesn't have an AP suggestion. I believe
Because they can go so many different routes.
Okay.
I could list that in there in sciences, but you can get into physics, you can get into honors physics, you can take
Chemistry,
honors chem.
biology.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's hard when there's so many different levels. That's why we kind of put it as a choice there.
Okay.
Because any of those choices when you're looking in those electives could be AP, could be honor.
So
There's
they
just
could
so
take
many
an
lists.
AP science elective in
Yep.
12th grade.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Yep.
Yes.
After some of the course titles, there's a small circled letter, an S, an M, or an
Mhm.
H. What is that?
So if you look on the first page, on page 5,
Okay.
the H is for the humanities. M and S means it will, because if you look on page 5, it tells you that not only do you need those 3 math courses that we require and those science courses, but then they have to take an extra credit of science, social studies, or math. So that S behind it or the M behind it means that elective class will satisfy that third optional credit that they need to be able to take.
Thank you.
On that the new course in music or an existing course, how do you satisfy teaching that without overextending our current staff? Is that something they accept, or how does that work?
If we put in music technology,
Yeah, the one
Yep.
that you were talking about.
then what they are telling me from the music department is the students that have already taken music theory and the ones that are going through, there's less likely to run 2 sections of music theory or history of rock and roll. They may choose to go music technology. So I will still have to look at Mr. Bradshaw, well, it won't be Mr. Bradshaw, he is retiring, but Mr. Bradshaw can teach 6 courses. Ms. Roberts can teach 6 courses. So what is the highest number of requests by students that I fill their schedule with? I won't necessarily give them another course to teach. There won't be something in their schedule in order for that to take its place in music technology, if that's by the student's requests.
So you take an existing one away and then satisfy the 6? Like if they're currently at 6 and you add this, you would take one out
Yes.
and then add one back?
Correct. Correct. So it won't have them teaching any more than the 6 that they're able to teach.
That's what I was curious.
Yes, no, it does not have anybody teaching anymore. It doesn't require any more teachers. It's just the menu of options that they choose from.
So how many, I can count them, but how many courses are there? Do you know?
I did not count them.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, I did not count them.
That's fine. I can count them, but I
Okay.
don't.
I did not off the top of my head. Probably the one thing I didn't do in all of the preparation that I put into have them. Being in 3 different high schools that I've had, our course selection that we have is not over or abundant to being in the different high schools that I have previously worked in the different districts. There's always a magnitude because your students and what they're interested in changes and shifts, just like the pendulum swings and everything else that we do. So sometimes you find a heavier number and the kids, oh, everybody sign up for this, and then it shifts. So you have to keep that menu going in order to entice our students. But again, if I brought to you 10 more classes and said, we want to add these 10 classes, it would not be at the cost of any additional teachers. It would be the classes that we actually ran if the students chose to take those courses. So you can offer as many as you want. We've been trying to take out things that students aren't taking anymore. Like I have a list of 2 to 3 classes that they only run every 2 to 3 years based on numbers. Some we're about to remove because they haven't, like creative communications. Our econ and our AP econ, they're on like a 2 to 3 year swing of when students take it. It's not something that we necessarily run every year. It's when that band of students that's coming up through decide that they want those courses. Like advanced lifetime sports hasn't run in quite a while. Our advanced class that we have right now in PE is on like every 2 years. It kind of runs that enough students, because one student, they won't have enough one year, then they'll do it again the next year and get more people to go into it. So it's a game of numbers.
Any other questions? Director Meese.
I know that the York County School of Technology is adding SIP codes. So is that how you pronounce it?
I think so.
Thank you.
See, you're with me.
I believe I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they're adding 3 maybe in the next school year. I assume you're in constant communication with that. Like, do we ever have a concern that we're going to be, because I know we can't offer it if they're offering it. So
I'm going to let Mr. Benton answer that. I don't have it.
I know, other schools in our county have CTE programs as well. So are you guys, you communicate with each other on a consistent basis to know what York County School of Technology is offering versus what we're offering? No. So how do you know, because I think they're adding 3.
That's news to me.
Okay.
I mean, they're running their own school. They don't share what
From what I understand, we're not allowed to run the same SIP code as York County School of Technology runs.
No, that's not correct.
I'm not correct in that?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's good, because I thought there might be a conflict.
No, because if you look in the regs, I'd like to know if York County School of Technology is telling you that. I'd like to see the regulations on that. Okay?
I'll ask.
Ask.
Okay.
Good luck finding it. Okay, because it's not there. As long as you have.
I'll just send an email to the business manager and ask him at York County School of Technology.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I just, during one of the meetings, maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah. So how a school district starts a certified instructional program, a SIP code, is they have to start with an occupational advisory committee, your business people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You form that. Then the occupational advisory committee will come in and look at your facilities. If you have space, if you have a teacher, you get a certified teacher. They approve that SIP code to be taught, and it's gone through PDE, through the Bureau of Career and Tech Ed. It's a long process to get a SIP code entered into it. But if they sign off on it,
yeah, okay,
you run it.
Okay.
And that's the whole thing. All our SIP codes, I was the one that started all of them. So it is a process. It takes about a year to get one started. So, but if you have the facilities, you have the budget, you have everything that you need, and you have the support through your labor stats, through workforce development, and the reason why it has to be a high priority or in-demand occupation to go with that, and you have the local businesses to say, yeah, you need to start teaching that, that's how it gets started. Okay?
Thank
Sure thing.
A few of us were just there for a tour on Friday morning, and I did not hear that
No,
either.
okay. You know I like to dream stuff up sometimes.
May I be excused?
Thank you and happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Faison.
Thank you.
All right, this opens up our first public comment period. The board uses the public comment period as an opportunity to listen but not to debate issues or enter into a question and answer session with the speaker. Public comment must be germane to school district business. The board values civil, respectful statements and clear, concise communications that help to inform its deliberations. All right, no one seeking public comment. Let's go to, before we go to the next agenda item, I note we have been here just shy of 2 hours. Do we need a short recess for anyone? Okay, we're good? Press forward. All right. Next agenda item is the announcement of executive sessions. We had director training on December 5th, and during that time period, we went into an executive session to discuss a confidential student matter. And on January 9th, which is tonight, we had an executive session to discuss, or for director training and also to discuss a confidential student matter. And next item is agenda item 4.02, the resignation of Heidi Meese as school board treasurer. Director Meese, would you like, you spoke previously to us during the executive session. Would you like to say anything publicly concerning that resignation?
No, I don't think so. Thank
Okay.
you.
So the floor is open for discussion. Seeing none, we'll go to the next agenda item, 4.03, appointment of school board treasurer, January 16th, 2024 through June 30th, 2024. That'd be the term. And it's open for discussion. Yes, Director Wolverton.
Terry, I mean, based on your fact, he's done it before.
Okay. All right. So we'll be taking nominations at our next week's business meeting. We'll be taking nominations to fill this position and then appointing someone. So there was some questions about the duties of the treasurer in our executive session. Is there any questions you want to ask publicly about the duties, or we have all those answers that we were discussing?
Could we get an overview of the duties? What responsibilities are involved in that?
And Ms. Weaver, you work with the treasurer the most. Can you provide any?
I have to say that there really aren't any duties of the treasurer. I spoke to some of my colleagues in other districts. Typically, there are a number of districts that have board representation as a treasurer. Many of them also have the assistant as a treasurer. I can't say that in my 22 years of experience that the treasurer really did anything.
Okay, but their signatures are on the checks that go out
Yeah,
via
there is a
automation.
signature. Yes, there is.
So if we didn't have the automation, they would be signing those checks.
I couldn't tell you, ever since I've been in school business, it's been automated, so I can't tell you how long ago that's been.
So it's a legal requirement to have their signature on the checks, right?
That is it, yes.
Right. So what do you believe the intent of having a a board member serve as treasurer, and it actually doesn't, it's not required to be a board member if I recall.
It's not required, no.
So the function of having an additional signature on an outgoing check from the administration, what do you believe is the function of that or purpose of that?
It's honestly, truly, as far as I'm concerned, it's old school code that's never been updated. When they list out the duties of the treasurer, there's no way that anybody that isn't an employee of the district would have access to any of that information, nor should they have to. We have internal controls in place, and that's why the people that are sitting in the position are doing those jobs. So I don't know what the treasurer could do. Many, many years ago, I'm sure when the school code was established, things were different. But as they are right now in 2024, there's nothing that the treasurer can, they review the board information just like all the board members do. Everybody has access to it.
So if you had, let's say there was a manual entry for them to enter their signature instead of the automation, if they withheld that signature, could you still issue the check?
Yes.
Okay, so whose signatures are on the checks?
The president, secretary, and treasurer.
Okay, so if there's no signature on the check, you couldn't issue it, right?
I don't think you could issue any check ever without a signature.
Okay, so what's the minimum signatures that you need on there? The CFOO or the secretary or treasurer or president?
I can double check to make sure. I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know 100%, so I wouldn't want to give you information that was false.
Yeah. So it appears to me it's some level of oversight from the board is the intent, right? You would assume?
Well, the board has oversight of all of the financial information that we provide to all the board members.
Okay, because I think one of the concerns about filling the treasurer duties is if it's just putting their electronic signature on the check, that person has to be bonded as a treasurer.
That is correct.
And so that protects them as an individual, right?
I would have to speak to our insurance agent as to the level of protection they receive regarding whether with what they do.
Okay, so that raises a concern is why would someone be willing to serve as a treasurer if perhaps they're not protected and they have some liability and they have no role in what their signature is being used for? No function.
I can't speak as to people that are treasurers in that position because I'm not really sure what their thought process is, so I wouldn't want to speak for someone else.
Right. So I think that's kind of perhaps even an ethical, but certainly a legal question we need to have. Can you provide some insight on that, Mr. Pratt?
President Conley, I think you're correct in some of your comments. There is a lot of question as to the rationale for still having the treasurer. I know that there are a number of requirements that auditors in the past have had when when you are doing checks and balances on how many signatures are on there. The requirement is more of a formality than anything else because the school code requires it. The treasurer is responsible, very similar to every single board member, to look at everything that comes across. You guys get a list of the bills, you get a list of everything else. It just adds an extra layer in regard to who's reviewing and who's signing off. The bonding that is required is the protection for that individual, and the levels that are provided to that individual does protect them from that liability. There's more than just that individual who would be liable for signing any check. It would be yourself, obviously, as president, and also as the business manager or who would ever be required or on that signature. And depending on what the issue is or what the check is for, depends on how many signatures are going to be on there to begin with. And sometimes it is a signature that if someone's not available, if you're not available, then or if the business manager is not available, sometimes the two signatures would suffice in that. But in today's age with electronic signatures, it's just a formality of someone being designated. That's why you have a number of school districts that board members aren't the treasurer. It's actually someone else that's the treasurer because of the availability of the individual and also that individual being able to review everything, be familiar with how everything goes, and making sure that that your checks and balances are in place when it comes to signing checks.
And thank you for that answer. So we have an option of appointing someone in the administration as treasurer, right?
Correct.
The problem with that is you have, perception of command control over that. So we wrote the check, I expect you to sign it, that type of thing. So as a board member, there's no pressure being applied on that person to sign it. If they feel good about signing it, they sign it. If they have a concern, then they raise that issue.
Well, it's not about pressure. It's not about if I feel good about signing it. Is if you as a board approve of that bill to be paid, it's going to be signed.
Right.
So it's not a pressure that no one can issue payment without your approval of that, depending on the amount, obviously. But there's no pressure to sign a check. But I can see what you're saying. If it's a person, if someone's writing a check to David Conley for, a couple $1,000 and they're like, hey, I'm the board president, sign this thing. I can see maybe that, but obviously there's checks and balances with you as the board reviewing everything. And then also with your business manager, business office reviewing all the checks that are going out, your auditors checking everything. So those checks and balances are already in place. So the pressure issue, I would not say is there
Well,
due to those precautions that are put in place.
So I was talking about pressure as an employee. So if you're an employee in the administration, you could receive pressure from your superior to sign the check. But as a board member, you could act more autonomously and
Correct.
not be subject to that pressure to sign a check.
Likely as a
So-
board member, you're just reacting to the board approving of the payment of the bills.
Right.
So therefore, you're signing that, you're agreeing to signing that check.
So I guess this works back around to, we have a resignation of a qualified individual who served as treasurer, but didn't really see the duties, but your electronic signature is being used the entire time, and you were never bonded, right? So we have a problem with our execution in that regard. So before we put someone else into that position, we need to resolve some of those concerns so that someone doesn't have the same feeling about their approach to the duties and their responsibilities and obligations. So, I would expect someone to be trained, someone to be protected with a bond, and then some way to function without slowing down the operation. Because if it's too cumbersome, you end up with a queue that's so large, the only way to get through it is just to rifle through it, and you're not providing the oversight that was intended to begin with. So what's your recommendation for the best way for us to ease people's minds about this moving forward, Mr. Pratt?
What I would recommend is, and this is just my recommendation, that if an individual is interested in being the treasurer, that if they have any specific questions, they're at your, I guess, direction, that they can contact me. We can have those conversations, and I could get them answers to their direct questions. I want to make sure that if they have questions, that I would be able to, answer those specific questions instead of just giving a broad, here's what the job duties are, and you're like, well, what does that mean? If there are specific questions that they have, that they can reach out to my office, and we'll be more than happy to address those concerns they have prior to next week's meeting.
Okay. All right. So I know that we had a couple of people's names that have come up. One is Director McKinney, and then Director Emig, your name was brought up tonight. Are you interested in the treasurer position?
I've done it before.
Okay. And are you interested, Mr. Director McKinney?
I had a question for Mr. Pratt. It sounded like in your last description of the duties in the approval process that a board vote as a whole is the treasurer's approval for that expense. Is that?
Correct. That's also the board president's approval to sign. Now, there is certain levels where that approval is not needed, and there's also situations where you give permission for bills to be paid prior to, prior to the approval by the board. That's just based on when they're due and everything else. So that would just be something where you would be doing it after the fact, but that would be exactly you as the board, when you go through the process, you're approving.
Okay, yeah,
those
so any
reports.
individual expenses, one-off expenses that are voted on, that's approved.
Correct.
So really anything that's approved, any budget line that's approved would also fall into that
Correct.
blanket approval?
Correct.
Okay.
You pay salaries because you approved a contract. You
So how
pay-
is there any, maybe there's not intended to be, how is there any oversight by the treasurer on the spending? Because I do see here in the school code section 437 that there's a annual audit of the treasurer's accounts. Is that still being,
That's your annual audit that you
Yeah.
receive, that you would be, I think,
That's our local auditors that come
Yeah,
in and
they-
do the audit.
they
It's
do that.
that's very outdated. The wording is very
Yeah.
outdated.
yeah, I
The
can tell it's not all entirely feasible.
remember
in
this
modern
was
times,
written.
Yeah, it's not. And
But
there's
it still is the law on.
Correct, but you have your local auditors that come in and do that work for you, that you don't have to worry about doing that yourself.
No, I didn't think I was going to do an
Unless
audit.
you
I'm not
really,
going
no.
to do an audit, but it does mention the treasurer specifically.
Understood,
on
but
that.
that's, your local auditors take care of that for you. Basically, you're designating the auditors to do that work for you, and you don't have to,
Yeah.
to go through that process.
Yeah, most of the time when my companies have had audits, usually they just come to me and ask a few questions like, have you seen any fraud, or are you aware of any fraud? Could it be?
I get the same letters
Just-
from your
yeah.
auditors, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that is part of the checks and balances with your auditors
Yeah,
that
and
come
the
in.
treasurer would probably
Yep,
be involved
exactly.
in that process then.
several of the board members are. They all get
Okay.
the same fraud questionnaire.
Okay.
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 So, and you encourage people that are interested to contact you individually to set up a
If
discussion?
that's the direction that you would like to go, that'd be more than happy to address those questions from any of the board members in regard to their role as treasurer, just from our
Is it
experience.
okay if they just email you or?
Sure.
Okay,
Yep, they have the email address. I gave them all the cards with my email address on there, so.
okay. So
If you don't have it, let me
mind,
know.
if you do that, I appreciate it if you would CC on that email, the president, vice president, so we
Absolutely.
can,
Perfect
be
idea. Yep.
informed. Okay.
And is the bonding covered by the school district?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Any other discussion about treasure? I encourage all of you to give consideration to serving. All right, the next agenda item that we have is 5.01 School Board Committee Representatives for 2024. We have a list of names. Is that going to go up on the board? This is on. There's no names filled in here. I'm going to go ahead and float the names that have been considered for these positions. The negotiations committee, we have no contracts that are pending, so there's no need to fill any positions from negotiations.
Correct.
The Dover Eagle Foundation, there were two people that submitted their names for that, Director McKinney and Director Hogan. For the LIU, this one was on our list because the Northeastern representative was not reelected. And so we were going to fill it from our district, but the Northeastern School District has advised us that they're going to fill that from their ranks. So we will not be filling the LIU position. The York County School of Technology, JOC, and the York County School of Technology Authority. My questions are, what are the differences between these two? And I'm going to try to briefly explain it. And for those who have, additional information and background, I'll encourage you to weigh in on this. The York County School of Technology, GOC, is their joint operating committee. That, for all practical purposes, is their school board for that one school. So it's composed of, I believe, their school director and a representative from the 14 districts that participate and support the York County School of Technology. So we have one of those positions. Director Meese has been in that position and has served as a member of the school board, but it is just like being on an entirely different school board. So you're on our board here as a school board member. You're also going to serve in the capacity as a school board member on the JOC. The York County School of Technology Authority, this was the one I had the biggest question about because I couldn't find much online about it, but we got a fairly comprehensive answer with some information I did not have an opportunity to read, but in essence, his name is Mr. Boyer, right? John Boyer. So John Boyer provided the information from the tech school, and he said that the authority is the entity that owns the property. So by agreement, York County School of Technology is not allowed to own property or real estate. So they've formed the authority by which to do that, and I can see some wisdom in doing that legally because as member districts contributing to this, maybe there could be a claim made to the property if it was ever dissolved, and it would be certainly a legal fight, I guess, if they were trying to figure out who gets what. So the authority actually owns that. So if the school ever stopped operating, the authority would have the authority, pardon the pun there, to disperse with the assets that the authority holds. So they meet once a month. The JOC meets how often, Director Meese?
Once per month,
Once per month also?
Yes.
Okay.
the fourth Thursday of the month.
So
Third.
by virtue of the nature of the investment that we have there for this year, I am considering putting Mr. Kindig and myself in those roles. Director Meese has served, admirably in that position, but it is a time-consuming obligation and a travel obligation as well. She works 12 hours a day in her regular job, so we're going to consider taking that load off of her, and then one of us, we haven't decided which one, take one of those positions. York Adams Academy, Director Emig has been in that position for quite some time and will continue in that position. York Area Earned Income Tax Bureau was already pre-filled with Mrs. Weaver and Mrs. Misty Danner. I'm assuming Mrs., right? Yeah.
Me?
No, I'm talking about Miss Danner. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get uncomfortable when I'm saying in public Miss or Mrs. and I don't really know the answer to that question. So, in any regard, what I want to ask, is it possible to involve someone else in that? Mr. Kindig or Director Kindig have some interest in that area for educational purposes. Is it permissible to involve him in that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You have any objection to get involved in that? Okay. For the legislative liaison, considering Director Whitmer, PSBA Director Meese, and then the IU-12, Dr. Cartwright has served in that capacity, but I'm considering Director Miller in that capacity. So if you have any input for that, please provide it this week because we'll be acting on it next week. And then the Dover Industrial Development Authority. Now, there's been some offline debate about what acronym are we using, and I don't know the differences. So here again, here's one of those. It's called an authority, and there's another one called a committee. Are you familiar with the other group that deals with this? Sort of. Okay. So we have several people involved in this. Director Hogan and Director Wolverton are interested in that. So I'd like some input on those positions. All right, any questions or discussion about any of that? Hearing none, we'll move to the next agenda item. Well, let me also, before I go to the next agenda item, you'll note on section 5, there's no consent agenda listed. That's purposeful. Consent agendas are things that are agreed upon to be non-controversial. So you put them for efficiency purposes into a consent agenda, and then when you go to the meeting, you could vote on all of them as a package if there's no controversy or deliberation involved in that. in a planning meeting, it's a little presumptuous to say that there's no controversy. This might be the meeting where we find there's a controversy. So we didn't put anything in the consent agenda till after this meeting. Second thing we want to change is one of the problems with the consent agenda is it becomes so comprehensive. Now, if you look at just this whole section number 5, we have, and I'm going to scroll down, 37 separate items. Now, that's a lot of detailed work. Now, if no one asks any questions, we would go to the next meeting. There'd be no discussion. You vote it all in. Public has no idea what we're doing. The other thing is there's non-germane items mixed there, and it puts artificial pressure on somebody who doesn't want to hold up somebody's leave request or transfer or resignation request or appointment or whatever from weighing into an issue. Well, the way around that is any director can raise an objection, so they want to have something pulled out. That is done without a vote. If any director does that, and I'm going through this because not only the change, but just for clarity of why it's done that way. If any one director has a question about something being put in the consent agenda, they can raise that issue and have it pulled out. That's the right of the individual director, and the Roberts rules that we follow is there to protect that person's right to discuss the matter. So what you're going to see on next week's agenda is multiple consent agendas that are grouped by subject matter. So, and I don't have the categories here, but they'll be germane. So one might be personnel actions, one might be field trip request or whatever it is. We had the group there, and I wish I had it right here in front of me, but we'll have them grouped according to that. Things can still be pulled out, but we will go through each consent agenda individually, and then we'll vote on those. Any questions about how we're going to do that and what that means?
That's good.
Okay. All right. The next agenda item is, to make sure, and catch me if I'm not in the right place, 5.02, which is the Dover Area High School 2024-25 Course Selection Guide, which was just briefed to us tonight. Is there any additional discussion on that? 5.03 is policies, second reading. This particular policy is policy 815, which deals with acceptable use of internet, computers, and network resources. The next agenda item will be the 5.04, which is the 2024-2025 district calendar. And you'll notice on the agenda there is this the first time, Dr. Cartwright, that we're going to do multiple years at once? Can you explain
Yes.
what our goals are there?
Yes. In the past few years, anyway, I believe Dover has only done one district calendar at a time. There are several districts in the county who do 2 and 3 at a time. So we thought we would try that in order to help employees and parents plan ahead a little bit. So they have calendars well ahead of time. We can always make adjustments if things change. Approving it next week does not mean it can never change. Sometimes we have to change things for different reasons. So it's just an experiment.
And probably as a parent or anybody that has impact by the school system, knowing several years out can really help with planning purposes. All right, so that takes us through, if you look at the district calendars, through 5.04 and 5.05. Isn't there another one that's on here below, or is that the only two that was on?
Just two.
Just the two, okay. All right, agenda item 5.06 is the Dover Area High School 2023-2024 early graduates. Dr. Cartwright, can you brief us on that? Is there anything to know?
The only thing you need to know is that that list of students are the students who choose to graduate early and have met all the requirements, and they must be board approved.
And the names of each one of those students is attached to the agenda. Any questions or discussion on that item? 5.07 is the 2024 Dover Area High School graduation, June 1st, 2024 at 9 a.m. in the high school stadium. High school graduation. Any discussion about that? There are several field trip requests, 5.07 all the way through 5.12. And I'm sorry, 5.08 through 5.12. So the particular agenda items are there. Do you think it's appropriate to brief these now individually?
Only if there are questions.
Okay. Are there any questions related to any of those agenda items?
I do have a question in regards to the first, not the first one, the second one, 5.09. The mini-thon, they're traveling up to State College, is that correct?
Correct.
And they're trying to stay overnight?
Can you speak to that, Mrs. Basic?
Yes, they're overnight, but it's thon, so there's no sleeping, there's no sitting. That's the dance and the standing. They get a room to kind of store their things, but they're going up to participate in the actual thon that Penn State puts on.
Okay, that's what I thought. So any of our groups of students done this in the past? Gone up there to participate in the State College thon?
Not since I have been here, because that was COVID when I came in, and they haven't done that in the past 4 years that I've been there. We have to be invited to be able to go. We only do mini-thon every 2 years. Some schools do it every year, so we only do it every 2. I don't know before my tenure. I don't know if any of the other administrators could speak to that. We're at the high school. They're
When
saying
you say we do mini-thon, you're talking about the event we have here at our
correct.
district.
And that goes on. They go to meetings with a lot of different districts that also do mini-thon that is overseen by thon. But based on, I don't want to say necessarily recognition that your district is getting, but what it is that you are doing, that's how you get the invite in order to be able to go to thon. So it is a prestigious thing to be able to do for our students to go and see the larger picture of what they're doing here and bring that back for the students.
Do we know how many students want to go?
I do not know off the top of my head. It would be just our committees. It wouldn't be just from our student body of who wants to go. It would be our students that are doing the planning in the committee. And I think that max there might be 20, 25 students that do that are on the committees. Again, it wouldn't be offered to our entire student body, and it's not at our expense.
The form that the teacher filled out says 10 students
Thank you.
attending.
I thought it was 10 per adult or chaperone. I thought maybe I read that wrong, but you're saying 10 students are going.
Yeah, the 10 per adult is probably our guideline. But the teacher who filled out the form indicated that there are 10 students attending.
Okay. Do the kids have to get parental consent to go to this?
Yes. Any of our field trips, they have to get parental consent.
Yeah. Thank you.
The funds come from the student council account?
No, this is paid. Some of ours though, but for this is all paid by thon. This is no, nothing on the part of the district.
Right. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question on 5.15.
We haven't gotten to that one yet. We're still on the field trips up through 5.12.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get to that one in just a second. All right. Any other discussion about field trips? All right. Next one is 5.13. Then we dance contract for the middle school dance. Second. Two attachments.
2 requests, different grade levels.
Okay. Yeah, there are. There's one for the 6th and 7th grade, and 5.14 is for the 8th grade. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, now we're to 5.15, which is the Mobile Ed Productions Incorporated Contracted Services Agreement for the Weigelstown Elementary School. Director Hogan.
Yeah, so my question is, it sounds like there's not enough space for one presentation, so they're gonna have two presentations. Is that second presentation mean that there's an additional cost, and that's where the PTO will pay part of that additional cost?
Dr. Strasbaugh, do you want to talk about that?
I think the contract is for 1,500, is that right? For a single assembly, I don't have the paperwork with me, but I think it's close to 1,000. So for the second assembly, it's not exactly double because they're already there, they're present, they're just running a second assembly. So since our divider door does not open in our multi-purpose room, we will run two assemblies. K12 will be one of the assemblies, and then 345 will be the other. Our PTO is basically picking up what they feel they can afford. Our PTO covers all of our field trips for us, and we also have essentially an extra grade level at Weigelstown with our autistic support classrooms. So they're very gracious in covering all of our field trips, so they couldn't quite cover all the costs of this assembly, but we do have the remaining balance budgeted in our building budget for an assembly. Does that help?
So, yeah, I'm trying to, it sounds like the additional fee is being charged because there's not enough space.
Correct.
Would it be possible, and I don't know, like, would the high school alleviate that or some other larger area that we have use of?
Then we'd have to bus them, so we still have.
Oh, it's during the
So
school.
then we'd be paying one assembly plus busing, so that really is
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
be
yeah,
a
yeah.
wash. So. And we did pick a curriculum-based assembly this year. It is STEM connected, so.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, that's cool. It's robotics and the assembly's going to be amazing. I was just trying to look to help save the PTO and some fees and costs, but
Yep, yeah. Anyone else?
Do all schools have the opportunity to have a program like this, or is it you want everybody to have the same
So,
opportunities?
yeah, we try to be as consistent as we can, and the other elementary principals can correct me if I'm wrong. We try to be as consistent as we can between the four buildings, but there's always going to be a few things that are a little bit individualized. We agree upon the field trips that each grade level was going to, so that, if one PTO has a phenomenal fundraiser one year and they want to take the kids to Disney, and the other schools can't do that, so that's equitable. When it comes to assemblies, I think everybody tries to run an assembly or two every year. How we finance those might be a little bit inconsistent based on what the PTOs can do to support each of the individual buildings.
So it's not that every school is going to have mobile ed? Or
No.
what it was?
Good assemblies are actually very hard to find, so we each grab something when we can get it to fit into our calendars and it's available. So, correct, our assemblies will not be exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Okay.
I have a question for our CFO, Ms. Weaver. So this money is not additional money. This is coming out of budgeted funds, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next agenda item is a letter of agreement, 5.16, letter of agreement with True North Wellness Services for SAP Liaison Services. Who can brief us on that?
Dr. Hout can.
So the SAP is a team that we have at the high school and the middle school. We currently get a drug and alcohol counselor for free from True North. So that SAP team will meet once a week. Teachers can kind of refer students that they have concerns about. And the SAP team, along with the counselor, will discuss that student. And the SAP counselor will reach out to the parent and inform them that there has been a concern, and then they work with the parent. The SAP counselor gets permission from the parent to speak to the child, and then they will, based on their conversations with the child, they will call the parent back and make recommendations to the parent. Here's what I think is going on. Here are some services that you can access to help your child. So we have had the drug and alcohol one. We used to get them both for free, but budgets hit everybody, right? So it hit True North as well. So they still provide the drug and alcohol counselor for free, but not the mental health counselor. I have a PCCD grant that I have to spend on mental health. So I am looking for ways that we can use that money. A SAP counselor is something that we are accustomed to having. We had one last year. We did not have one this fall only because they experienced a staffing shortage and they didn't have a counselor to give us. They have hired a counselor that will be available for us from January until the end of this year. And I will use that mental health grant money to pay for that counselor.
How much money do you get in the mental health grant?
$150,000. Was that right, Mr. Perkins? Mr. Perkins and I have been tag teaming on that. We got actually another 150 for safety that we had to spend on safety, and then 150 for mental health. And I'm actually asking for an extension. I was supposed to have exhausted those funds, but as you know, I received a lot of money for mental health, and the people aren't there to hire. So I'm asking for an extension that will allow us to use that money again next year.
Who's providing the grants? Is that federal government?
It is. That's the
Pennsylvania Crime Commission.
Pennsylvania Crime and Commission on Delinquency.
PCCD,
This one is not considered federal funding.
It's not
state funding, Pennsylvania.
state funding.
Some of the PCCD grants were considered federal funding because it was funneled through ESSERS, but this one is not.
Is there, for this contract, any intervention is pre-coordinated with the parents first?
That is correct. The counselor doesn't even see the child without permission from the parent.
Okay. And is this something that our on-staff counselors are not capable of doing? Is it outside their training, or,
It's a different level of expertise.
so this is a higher level of expertise?
Yes.
It's a different level of counseling.
Right.
Okay. Is this something that's mandated by state law?
SAP is, yes.
So if we decide we didn't want to contract, we would be violating law, right?
Not really, because we do have the drug and alcohol counselor at our disposal. So we do still conduct those SAP meetings, but now we have somebody whose expertise is more in mental health.
Okay, so the total of this one looks like somewhere in the range of $45,000. Is that about right for the year?
That is for the remainder of this school year. It is $37,000 from January 22nd through June 15th.
Okay. So a full year. So we've been operated with up to this point with last year's contract. Is that, or is this something brand new we're starting?
No, it is not brand new. We did have it all of last year. We were not able to get a counselor
Okay.
from September until now because they didn't have one to give us.
Okay. All right. Is there any questions or discussion about this item? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next. Item 5.17, New Story School Services Agreement for the 2023-2024 school year. Who can provide a briefing on this?
This is what we discussed in executive session this evening that cannot be discussed in public.
Okay. All right. Item 5.18, the RWAN Regional Wide Area Network Contract. The agreement is attached to the agenda item. Mr. Boyd.
So this was competitively bid through the Lincoln Intermediate Unit. It is for our internet services and our inter-building connectivity. It is mostly funded through E-rate dollars, which are federal dollars that we get every year. We get an allocation of funds. And what we see in this is what we currently have proposed for this. It is an increase in bandwidth due to our usage, and it also increases our bandwidth connectivity to our remote sites, because right now we have basically, we're out of bandwidth at the middle school, which all the sites come back into. So we need some additional bandwidth there to go to the elementaries. We do see a little bit of savings here, mostly because we removed one site that we ran direct fiber to ourselves, and we also got additional E-rate dollars with our funding for this year. Any other questions?
Is this the little thing that's right in the middle of the classroom?
No,
Like,
no,
not
that's
that
for wireless internet. This is the actually connecting out to the internet, what comes into the building. So it's Comcast fiber is what we have. But the IU brings it all collectively back to their data center, and then all the school districts funnel off of that. It provides a lot of resources for cybersecurity and DDoS protection as well by having it gone through the IU rather than each district buying their own. And then we have competitive agreement. That way we have every district, I think, except maybe one or two in the IU, has elected to join on this contract.
And the total cost of this contract is how much?
It's in the proposal there. I think it's about $1,400 a month is what our cost is for a total of, yeah, it's $1,400 a month. Multiply that times 12 months.
Okay.
And that's what we would be paying.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion on this
I'm
item?
familiar with this exact service from a previous job where I did E-rate.
Yeah.
Does the tech department do the E-rate application?
So in this scope, the IU takes care of doing all of that, which is bundled in with this whole agreement, which makes it nice
Yeah, but
because
they just take a
they
percentage.
bid it, they take care of all the documentation, and then we just kind of reap the benefits of having to pay the reduced amounts.
Familiar with that.
Yeah, and some of the other stuff,
Contract, but
yeah, some of the other stuff we buy, the access points, we usually just contract with the IU to do all the paperwork and everything for that, just because they're familiar with it and the E-rate regulations change constantly.
yeah, E-rate's not fun.
So it's hard to keep up with all that.
Do you happen to know what Dover area school districts E-rate discount
We're
percentage?
80%.
80?
Yes. We were 60 up until last year, and then we did move to 80%.
That's nice.
So yeah, it definitely does help us out, and then it lowers some of these bills
Oh, yeah.
significantly.
Completely pays for internet almost at 80%. So
Yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Okay, just for clarification, so the $1,400 is for the entire district
Yes.
or not for school? Because I know there's a lot to read in this agenda, but I was,
Yeah. So they take the.
it's broken out by school there, and that's what was confusing me.
Yeah.
In Appendix 1.
So basically, that's the amount of internet we're getting per school, and then the total price is that table 3 in Appendix 1. Is the total amount billed.
Well, 3.
Total monthly billed amount.
Okay.
There's a lot of tables in there for how much internet you're getting, what buildings are getting service at, what bandwidth they're getting at the buildings, what bandwidth you're getting out to the actual internet. But the total is $1,494.12
Okay.
per month.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Whitman?
Mr. Boyd,
Yeah.
what other benefits, I mean, as far as the districts that you said are not participating,
Yeah.
what benefits would they have to not participate?
A lot of those districts, I came from one of them, we had private fiber between all of our buildings. With this contract, you get a lot of benefits with having multiple buildings on it. If you just have one building, it's not as good of a benefit, and you might be able to get some bandwidth a little bit cheaper. But since we have multiple buildings falling back onto that, it gets us a little bit higher tier of support as well, because the IU is now buying for 15 different school districts. I don't know the number exactly, but versus just one district trying to deal with support, they have a whole entire level of support through Comcast that they can call on and have usually 2 to 3 hours of support versus just trying to navigate that as one entity. It's a lot.
So you're saying the other school districts who have the different bandwidth,
They usually have private fiber, like the district ran the fiber between all the buildings. One of the districts I came from, we had a contract that we ran out, but that was like $1.5 million, $2 million contract that we had paid through E-rate, but it's all essentially their stuff at that point. So they don't have a monthly cost on it, but it's a huge upfront cost to get that done.
mm-hmm.
And it takes months and months to get that done, in addition to the money that we have to fund as well.
And what does IU benefit by having that workload on their plate, do they get a cut?
They do get a little bit of a cut for the E-rate commission, and there's a monitoring fee or management fee in there for, they monitor all the circuits. They also have DDoS protection, so if there's some sort of cyber attack where somebody's trying to funnel in a lot of bandwidth to a lot of schools, which we've seen that quite a bit over the recent years, not us directly, but in the IU, they can actually block the traffic upstream before it even gets down to the district level. And once all that traffic gets to the district level, you can't really use the internet at that point because there's too much traffic coming in and it's overloading the pipe. So at that point, they can kind of block that. And if we were to pay for that out of pocket, it would cost a significant amount of money, but they break it apart across all the districts. So we're paying, a portion of that fee rather than the whole entire fee.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So.
This keeps us from having to deal with Comcast customer service.
Yes, they have their own team and they take care of dealing with it, and it's the way to go.
Yeah. All right.
Any other questions?
Very good.
All right.
Thank you. All right. 5.19, agenda item memorandum of understanding with E&B Transportation for additional van for special needs students. There's an explanation in the agenda item on the website. Is any discussion about this? Any questions? Is this covered in our contract? No, this is an
This would be
additional
in addition.
$213 per day.
That's why we need your approval.
Right, okay. All right. Agenda item 5.20, Weigelstown Elementary Hot Water System System Controller Replacement Proposal, which we didn't get to tour this school, but we toured 2 others and can appreciate why they might need this. So, yes.
So what you're looking at is a controller for our building automation system that is at Weigelstown. So the main controller at the top and the 2 that are below it, the 2 below it daisy chain together. These were put in 2009. So we're about 15 years out on those, and the one failed. So when that failed, you have to replace them in together, both of them together at the same time. Technology's changed since 2009, so you actually need to replace both of them. So that we replace those 2 control boards on the bottom, and what they services is all the chilled water and hot water loop items that come back to the building automation system. So your chillers in there, your boiler, all your actuators, your valves, your differential pressure switches, all come back to that and feed back to the building automation. So what we'll do is we will keep the one board that is still good because we have that set up in some of our other buildings. So if one goes bad in the future, we'll just keep that. But they do have to put in a new controller and expander, so they changed it a little bit, how they would come back into the system then.
So this is the one school, and you're expecting we're going to need to do this in all the other schools as well?
At this stage, yes, we will be doing this. Yeah, 15 years on a building automation controller. It lived a good life.
So this is 11 grand for this school.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming it's going to be 11 grand for each school.
It would all
Longer we
depend.
wait, the higher the price goes.
It would, yeah, it would, yes, exactly. And it would depend on the age of the building. Some of the buildings, the controls are newer. This building, the controls for the chilled water and the hot water loops are just a little bit older.
Any questions?
Would the spare board be usable at, let's say, North Salem or Live, like the ones you just showed us?
Yes, as long as it matches the same controller that's on that, like the same model, yes, it would. Now, if it would be over to high school, no, it would not work over to high school because what would be going into this panel would be the same kind of technology that's at the high school then. So yeah, but we could use it at the older buildings where technology still exists. Yep.
Any other questions?
Is any of the funding that was going to be used for the Crabtree Rohrball thing available to be used to replace this?
ESSER? You're talking specifically ESSER funds?
No.
Okay. Good question, though. Any other additional questions reference this contract?
Well, do we have any funding left over to us from grants to pay for this repair?
I don't believe so. Yeah.
ESSER had to be used for COVID mitigation. And so anything that can't be related back to COVID does not qualify.
Well, we used ESSER funds for HVAC and roofs and things of that nature, so
Because that is that's
structural,
air filter. Well,
It,
you can explain it, sorry.
it has to come back to air quality.
gotcha.
So this affects functionality but not air quality.
Yeah, this controls the chilled water loop and the hot water loop. So yeah.
Any other questions? All right, next two agenda items are obsolete listings. 5.21 is the listing for North Salem Elementary. 5.22 is obsolete technology listing. They're both attached for the public to view. Any questions or discussions about either ones of those? Okay. Okay. All right. Agenda item 5.23, the annual financial report for year ending June 30th, 2023. This is extensive. There's a report on here that is 103 pages long. Is anybody prepared to brief that?
The auditors will be here next week to discuss the year.
Okay.
Please.
Any red flags? I didn't see any when I read through it.
No. I'm an auditor. I'm a CPA, so no, there's no red flags.
Okay. All right. Next one is agenda item 5.24, the IDEA B pass-through funds allocation agreement for 2023-2024. Assuming Ms. Weaver, you'd be the one to provide information on that.
It's just funding that's passed through the IU for our children with disabilities. We receive the funds every single year. It's based on the number of students and a set amount per student. That amount is set by the IU. What we do is we use this to offset the costs of our Schedule A, which are list out the services that the LIU provides for our students at Dover.
So this is considered revenue for the district?
That's correct. It is revenue.
Okay,
It is the local revenue.
excellent. Any questions? Let me ask you this. Why is it put in the form of an agreement? Is this is not a payment. This is just the agreement that we're going to use to operate under to receive payment?
That's true. But even for grants, even though they're agreements to receive funds, we still sign them.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions? All right, Treasurer's Report 5.25, Ms. Weaver.
Heidi, this is where you can see where all the money has been invested and what the interest rates are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I encourage members of the public to take a look at that. There's two reports in there, one for November and for December of
Yes, because we didn't
2023.
have a meeting in December, so
Right.
they're both in there.
Okay. There's item 5.26 is bills paid. There's two listings for November and December of 2023, which is the check registers for all funds.
It's the same thing. It's just because we didn't have a meeting and.
Right. So this is all outgoing expenditures, right?
Correct.
Agenda item 5.27, additions to approved driver listing. It's got two names to be added there with their start dates. Agenda item 5.28, 5.29, 5.30, 5.31, 5.32, and 5.33 deal with personnel actions. These will all be lumped into a consent agenda for, what did we name that? Human resources? Right.
Yes.
So individual names are all listed in that. We won't read them here. Any questions or discussion on those? Okay, I think I also mentioned 5.34, talks about tenure. The next agenda item, three agenda items are minutes of the November 21st, December 5th, and December 14th meetings. And I encourage the directors to read through this thoroughly. In those meetings, we will be reading the minutes. That's customary for, and I know it's not customary for school districts, it appears, but in association meetings and meetings that are following Robert's rules, you read the minutes. It takes a motion from a member to dispense with the reading of the minutes. So we'll plan to read these minutes. The reason they are very, very important, it is the only official record of the business that we do. Business is not what we said at the meeting, not what we talked about. It's the motions that we passed or the motions that we deliberated upon. So those are the actions of the board. So if a motion passes or fails, it will be recorded on who made the motion, who seconded the motion, and what the vote tally is. Needs to be accurate. There has been some situations in the past where the meetings minutes were not accurate because directors have not paid close enough attention. It's easy to happen when you have this many items on the agenda to not read through this. It's within reason to put great trust in the people that are taking care of this for us. However, it's our responsibility, not their responsibility, to make sure that it's accurate. So I encourage you to read it. Any questions or discussion about that, those items, or what I just briefed on? All right, next section is discussion items. Policy 6.01 policy, first reading. This contains 3 policies. Number 1, name and classification. We found an error in the way in that policy where we were misclassified. That's going to be corrected in that policy. Policy number 306, the employment of summer school staff. And then policy 254, educational opportunity for military children. Encourage you to read all of those. There's an explanation of the changes in the actual agenda item on the website. Any discussion about either one of those?
I just have a question in regards to our classification being changed. Are there many details as to how we have changed based on the classification change?
No, I think it was an oversight last time the policy was looked at. Our population hasn't changed that much, even with the loss of Washington Township. I really think it was just an oversight.
So with the classification change, there's not a whole lot that changes.
The classification hasn't changed. It
What
was
hasn't?
wrong in the policy.
So we're correcting the policy
Okay.
to align with this. The classification is
Gotcha.
contained in the law, in Act 1949,
Mm-hmm.
and we were misclassified in our own policy.
Gotcha.
So we're just correcting that.
And it's just based on the community's population.
Right,
That's it.
gotcha. Thank you.
Doesn't change anything. I just like things to be correct.
Yeah.
When I read
might have
the
noticed.
code, most of the laws were separated. There was laws for first class and then laws that applied to second, third, and fourth. So it really won't change anything legally
Mm-hmm.
for us.
That is true.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Any other discussion about that one? All right, next one is policy number 6.02, earned income tax. Vice President Kindig, let you brief this.
The earned income tax is something I've been campaigning for quite some time to try and relieve the stress of property tax, especially on the widows in the district. I went to a meeting of Representative Groves up in the township building the other month, and there were 2 different gentlemen stood up. One of them asked Representative Grove what he can do about property taxes, and the second gentleman stood up and said, I spent my entire life buying my house, and now I feel like I'm renting my house from the school district because of property taxes. So the earned income tax, we'd have to form a tax commission, and they would have to study it. Then that would have to be brought back to this board, for this board to decide if they want to do anything about it as far as putting a referendum out on the ballot. If we decide to do that, then the public, during a municipal election, as Solicitor Pratt pointed out, so it wouldn't be this election coming up for when we do presidential election, it'll be the following. So we're actually a year and a half, 2 years out. But I'd like to get this moving because we've got a whole bunch of stuff to take care of. And I think this is something that I'd like to see us at least agree to put a tax commission together. But it's up to the 9 members of this board to decide whether they want to do that or not.
And,
So we'll
and
be discussing that next week.
Vice President King, to just make sure you understand, the vote would be in 2025 for taxes in 2026.
Right.
So that's when that would, so it would not have any impact on anything until 2026, should the community approve that change.
Now, the other thing is the one document that's attached to here. I'm not sure what we're trying to show here. The administration presented that document. I just don't understand. We have millage for real estate tax. We have percentage for the EIT, earned income tax, and then we have total. But you can't mix earned income tax with millage unless you do some other calculations to come up with an accurate picture of millage. So I'm questioning this chart, and I'd really like the administration to take another look at this before next week's meeting so we can get an accurate chart out to the public.
That chart is attached.
We can take it off again. I only attached it again because we corrected the West Shore versus West York question that I thought you had last week when we
Right, but we
talked.
had a discussion when Dave and I met with the superintendent to review the agenda. We had a discussion that you can't add millage to EIT percentage and come up with a total that appears to be millage, but it's not. It's not an accurate number.
We can remove the document.
I would suggest keeping it because as I was reflecting on this helped a lot. Now I can see your total point. That doesn't make sense, but knowing where we stand and how we compare against our, partner districts helps to gauge, a decision. So it looks like we're at 0.9 EIT when most everybody else is at 0.5.
That's
Well,
correct.
the other correction on this that we should make is York City's at 0.75, according to what I pulled off of York County tax website.
So it sounds like if you were going to reduce property tax, you would have to gain the additional tax from somewhere else. And there's a EIT tax, there's a net profit tax, and then there's a personal tax that could be used to offset it according to what I was reading in the documentation. A net income tax would be a tax on the business. EIT tax is what we're already paying, and we would increase that. Or a personal tax, which is, I believe, taxation outside of, it includes like a variety of things other than just income. So we would have to look at that for sure, and consider which one of those columns you would want to increase to offset if you're going to plan on lowering property taxes. But looking at the chart, we're already at 0.9, so I don't think that's going to sit well unless you can come up with something more creative.
As far as including the chart, I would suggest that the information that we know that's reasonably accurate, and we can double check the items that he mentioned about whether EIT is accurate for every district or not. I'm assuming you checked the millage as well. There was no errors with the millage.
I did not check the millage. I just made the assumption they were accurate.
Okay. The only discrepancy I think we really have in this, because having the basic information I think is helpful for the public, but the total millage, we can eliminate that column, and then the ranking becomes irrelevant because we really don't know the ranking because the only thing that you can really compare is how much revenue is generated by the millage, how much revenue is generated by the EIT. those two numbers become compatible. And since we don't have that, it's going to be difficult to do that. So I would eliminate the total column and the rank column and leave the rest of the information there with whatever corrections are submitted by Director Kendig. Is that okay?
Sure.
Any objection to that?
So do you want to eliminate?
So it's got the name of the district on the left, then it has the millage, then it has the EIT. Those two, columns appear to be fine. When you total, where it says total, what it's basically doing is it's adding, the EIT as a millage to the millage and coming up with another number, and that's not accurate. So just eliminate that total column. And then, since we won't really know what the ranking is, we'll take the ranking out.
Either that or put a ranking beside the mills and a rank beside the EIT based on the mere fact that's exactly what people are going to sit there and do anyway.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I'm dead serious. That's what they're going to be looking at.
When you need a ranking, just sort them as is here.
Yeah, so,
I would do it by millage.
well then if you're going to do that, for it to be of any use, repeat the data. One is sorted by EIT, the other one's sorted by mills. Let's just do that. Okay. All right. Any other discussion?
Yes, question.
Oh, yes, Director Meese.
I hesitate to speak up sometimes because sometimes I think I'm just not seeing the full picture, but I'm looking on the York County Tax Bureau's website, and the Dover EIT rate is 1.4.
That's between, it's both. It's ours and it's our share and their share. So their share is 1.5 and our share is 1.9, so that's 1.4.
Wait a minute.
Who's there and are? What do you mean there?
The county.
Yeah, the county. When I say there, the county.
So the county gets part of the EIT and
Correct.
then
Mhm.
we get part of it.
Oh.
Yes.
So the total is 1.4,
Correct.
but
District.
the district gets 0.9.
Correct. Yes, it's just like realty transfer. Realty transfer, we get 50%.
I got you.
And the county gets 50%.
Okay. I
So it's
wasn't
very
sure
similar to
if
that,
the
yes.
1.4 and the 0.9, like you had calculated it to equal the millage or something like
No,
that.
no,
So,
it's
okay.
just, it's their share, not
And that's
the
why you
county share
added
and
them
our
together. Okay.
So is that like a collection fee? So if we eliminated EIT altogether, would we eliminate that other 0.5 EIT? Or would we still have to pay EIT to just the county?
I would assume that I'm sure there's some kind of legality that says that you'd have to pay it to the county. I mean, they're the one who they collect it. We don't collect it, they
Right.
collect it, and they distribute it to us,
Right.
the district.
Yes.
Did you say eliminate EIT?
Yeah.
You can't do that from what I hear.
I would
You-
assume not, but
Yeah.
I would assume you can't eliminate EIT, but.
For the longest time, you paid an earned income tax in York County of 1%. And then around 2006, I think it was, the state said that school districts could charge more than their 0.5% share, and that's how we got to where we are right now.
That's why so many of them are at 0.5,
Correct.
because they stayed with
They just
0.5.
stayed there.
Some went up. Okay.
But we don't have Harley Davidson, we don't have Gladfeller paper, so our district is at a disadvantage when it comes to taxes.
Right.
So as we're talking about this, just throwing some things out there, if like the case you kind of started with were, widows and people having a difficult time with the property they have, paying their property taxes. Is there a way that there could be a submission of some type of need for those who are requesting that, deduction, and that could be taken on as a case by case basis instead of making it? I'm just throwing this out there. I know we don't have the answer to this, but that's an option I was thinking. The other thing I was thinking was, the property tax impacts business, right? Like the businesses that we would draw into our community, right?
Yeah.
So a lower property tax would maybe help incentivize a business to develop in Dover.
Or a deferred tax break. that would incentivize.
Right. So I was thinking more along the lines of what you just said, like, if we're trying to attract business to help alleviate a tax issue, give them like a deferred tax break of some sort for a couple years or however that works.
It's called load of property. It's a reduced tax rate over, I want to say 5 to 10 year period.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that's what takes place in the area or not, but those are just some thoughts I was, reflecting on as considering a decision that I'm gonna have to potentially vote for.
Very good.
So seniors right now can apply for a tax rebate, property tax rebate. That's available every tax season for them to fill that application out.
How much do they get back?
I couldn't answer any of those questions.
It's through the state, it's not
Yeah.
through us. It's they receive funds from the state.
So the state will so they reimbursing their local taxes or their state taxes?
I believe it's possibly state. It's usually, it could be local. I'll have to look into it. I'm not, I don't want to speak.
Yeah,
I
okay.
don't want to say too much without knowledge.
And the other thought in regards to businesses is we're one of like 10 municipalities in York County that charges a mercantile tax to businesses. That's a hindrance to business.
That's township tax, and they're now going to eliminate it.
It's grandfathered in, and they
It's why they will look at you and tell you, we have not raised taxes in the township in the last 12 years, 15 years, whatever it is. And that's how we were able to, for example, build that garage up here for $3 million. And they'll tell you, we didn't raise taxes. Well, no, that's because you get close to $500,000 a year. You put it in a bank account, you wait till you
Could you
get.
speak it closer in the mic, please?
And what they do is they put the mercantile tax into a fund, and they get roughly $500,000 a year in Dover Township, is what I understand. And that's how they were able to build like the garage they built inside the township building for $3 million and say, hey, we never raised taxes. Well, no, that's because you've been, the last couple of years, you've just put it into a fund, let it grow, and then build what you want as you go along. And that's how they fund their projects.
Hmm.
But it also keeps the businesses out of here.
All right, so that, we won't have any impact on that, though, not from the school board. Any other discussion on this agenda item? All right, this brings us to our second public comment period. Is any members of the public seeking to make a public comment? Seeing none, we move to the next is comments and observations from the board members. Director Wolverton, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would like to have a briefing monthly if we could for any kind of legal issues. When I talk about legal issues, I'm talking about any kind of vandalism, trespassing, any of that thing that involves, either the school taking formal action or the police, even to the point of how many kids are getting charged with vaping charges, that type of thing. And that moves on to another issue, and this is this. We discussed this in a previous briefing one time, the idea of the vandalism that oftentimes goes in the school, such as the plumbing issue. Can we legally put an administrative fee of like $150 to be able to file against, say, a student, a parent, to take them to the district magistrate and let them pay for whatever we paid for a plumber to come do the work, or the time it's taken the maintenance guys to do it outside of their normal duties?
You could take legal action to try to collect that amount from the parents, correct, yes. But you'd have to file a claim against them and go for judgment and have them pay for that.
Well, what I'm getting at, Ben, is as much as anything, is just to say, hey, as a motion, we, as the Dover School District, if we have to go after Ben Pratt's kid for vandalism, here's $150 that we charge on top of it for the filing fee.
Well, yeah, you would include, any type there's damages, you can always include in your request the filing fees.
Well, I'm saying, make it so that it's
Punitive.
understood. It is just a fee of $150.
You're making a punitive, punitive fee. Just because you did it, you're gonna pay $150. There's no justification except that you did it.
You can only charge if
Yeah.
you know who did it. And
Yeah.
often with vandalism, we cannot prove who did it.
We can, is what I'm getting at.
I don't think the statute allows you to do that type of, when you're talking about collection. The only time that you could get punitive damages, treble damages, things of that nature is if the statute allows you to collect that. I
I'm
don't,
just saying the idea of adding it as, this is Dover School District's filing fee.
right, but your filing fee is what the county charges for you to file with the MDJ. Because it's going to be a small claims more than likely.
Okay.
It's not
we
even going to
list
get
it
to
as an administrative fee.
Yeah, so you're looking at more of an administrative fee.
Yeah, 'cause
That would be
it's all in the wording to be able to.
Right, but if you would look at, if you peel it back a little bit and see what it really is, it's more of a punitive that you're
Yes.
putting together or treble damages. And I don't believe, but I'll double check. Depends on what the crime is that's committed as to whether or not you can get punitive damages from a third party on that issue. But I'll double check that for you.
Okay,
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Sorry, on that same topic, Mr. Pratt, can you collect legal attorney fees for you having to file the paperwork?
You wouldn't have, again, only time that you can collect fees is if the statute allows you to collect fees, and it depends on what crime is committed as to whether you get
Well,
these
like
fees.
take vandalism
No,
for.
I don't believe that
No.
would fall into that category. And I'd be honest with you, if you're gonna do something in small claims, and most of the times when we do things for like truancy and stuff like that, we don't even get involved. You got the forms all ready to file, and it's a simple, review by my office, and then you got them, more than likely, I believe in the past, it was Mrs. Kroom that went, I'm not Mrs. Kroom, but Mrs. Banco that would just show up and deal with those issues, not myself, so, because it's just small claims court at that point in time.
Yeah, 'cause
I guess that would be like, to his point, the administrative fee versus
I
like the
understand.
legal fee. So if one of our admin team has to do that and we can't collect, but we can collect for legal, then it would be better, more
Could,
prudent to
depending
have
on the
you do
issue.
it.
To pay for your administration to show up, I can tell you right now, the judge is gonna tell you that's the cost of doing business, is to have your people
Right,
show up.
but yeah, you
Which
can't
as
collect
a
like
business owner, you're
salaries.
fully
Right.
aware.
Right.
Um,
That's what I was saying. If we could collect legal fees, then we would have you do it and show up,
right.
Right, but again, it
versus an
depends on the crime, and we'd have to do that on a case by case analysis. But I'll double check on some of those issues.
Okay.
Yeah. Between Christmas and New Year's, I had a unfortunate conversation with an individual, and this is really kind of serious. A woman, I had graduated from high school with her husband. This woman proceeded to explain to me that she has a family member who works for the school district. The family member, as she was explaining, had some issues concerning her employment. I said, well, bring them to the school board, yakety yak. She made it very clear to me in no uncertain terms that the family member was directed and told, you had better not be talking to any of those school board members. I was really surprised at this, but she was dead serious. And I just wanted to make sure the administration is aware that there is a supervisor somewhere out here, because the aunt would not tell me who the employee was, who the family member was. But she made it, there was no question as to this taking place. And I just couldn't get any information. I couldn't get what building they worked in, what department they worked in, anything. Because she was afraid of reprisal. But she made it very clear to me that one of the instructions was, you had better not talk to any of those school board members. That was given to her family member. I wanted to put that out here. I'm ashamed that, sorry that they left, because I wanted to hear, let them know there's somebody out here doing this. And it's just something the administration needs to deal with in regards to. We're trying to get a good working environment, and this is going on. Somebody's doing it. That's all I've got to say on the issue.
Understand, Mr. Wolferton, we've had these discussions in the past about chain of command and making sure that they go through the proper chain of command, and the fact that as a school board, you may have to sit as judge and jury. So to have that information may not be the most appropriate thing for the board member or board members. But the emphasis is that we've always been doing is making sure they're going through chain of command, supervisor, next level through that, so that, and you have a director of human resources. But I understand your point,
I'm
but
concerned about the idea of a hostile work environment.
Correct.
We end up getting sued over what somebody's doing as much as anything, and the whole time it's criminal activity, harassing and retaliating.
Understood.
Intimidating us. And that's only my experience as a union president, because I've gone through this nonsense.
Understood.
touchy subject. That's between you and I. But, you know,
Again,
we're talking the same thing.
yeah, public entity, I just want to make sure we're very clear about that situation. Director of Human Resources, who you have, is probably the most appropriate person for that individual to go to deal with those situations. But yes, you're right, retaliation, that is frowned upon by all statutes, and so, yes, that is something that should be taken very serious. And in those cases, for any board member, if anyone comes to you about personnel matters, it should just be directed towards a Director of Human Resources so that they can handle the matter for you.
Anything else,
I
Mr.
am done.
Director Wolf? Okay. Director Whitmer?
The only thing I wanted to question is, have we gotten some really good feedback from all avenues on the pilot program? Because I saw that it's in the budget to purchase, so it sounds like you're moving forward, and I'm just curious.
Yeah, so we plan to update the board next week to give you
Okay.
a short update on how it's going. But then I do have teachers. I'm hoping I can get teachers to actually come and present to the board in February so that you can hear directly from them how they're feeling about the program. But overall, I think the pilot is going very well. They really love the writing component because there's a reading component and a writing component. So I've heard absolutely no constructive criticism whatsoever about the writing component. The reading component is a little bit different than what we're used to. Understand that programs are written for the entire country. They like to sell them all over the country. So what every district has to do is take a look at that program and say, what in this program is Pennsylvania state standards. So there are sometimes things in a program that you eliminate because they're not part of the standards, and there are sometimes Pennsylvania standards that this nationally written program doesn't cover. So we always have to make those adjustments. So that's what we're looking at with the reading program. What do our standards say? Have our expectations been? How do they fit into this program, and what adjustments might we need to make? You will never find a program that is perfectly aligned to what we do. We always have to make those adjustments no matter what the program is. Surprisingly, the writing program, they're loving it. So the reading is sort of what we're working through right now. What adjustments would a teacher need to make to align with the Pennsylvania standards?
So if there are numerous adjustments, would you still want to follow through with buying the program?
If there were too many, that it became way too cumbersome for the teacher, then no, we wouldn't. That's not what we're
Not
finding.
saying that.
No,
Do you have parent input at all to share?
not yet. We can certainly gather that from the parents of the students that are in those classrooms.
It'd be nice just to know what other people are thinking too outside. I mean, on the other side of it, and
Certainly.
that'd be great. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, anything else, Director Whitmer?
Good.
Okay, thanks. Director Meese?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
You don't?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. Director McKinney?
Nothing other than thank you for those of you who stayed the whole time.
I excused the others. They have to get to work by 6:30 or 7 in the morning.
So do I.
I let them go, yes.
Okay.
How did you let them go?
I know.
Pardon me?
I just thought maybe you waved at them or something.
We have ways.
Yeah, okay.
All right, Director Hope,
Oh, go ahead.
do you have anything, Director McKinney? Okay,
I have nothing.
okay. Director Miller?
I just wondered what Teacher Trade Day is on the calendar. I saw Teacher Trade Day.
Oh.
Just didn't know what that was.
Is that the November 8th or 6th or 7th for parent-teacher
Yeah,
conferences
it's around
in
parent
November?
conferences. Yes, it's November
So
8th.
teachers in grades K to 8, elementary and middle school teachers have 2 evenings of conferences, Wednesday and Thursday evening. So they're off Friday in exchange for those 2 evenings.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Trade time,
Okay, got it. Thank you.
one way of saying it.
Okay.
And then the high school teachers do 1 evening of conferences and 2 back-to-school nights. Their second back-to-school night is for the second semester. So they also get that trade day. It's just for different work.
And what's been the parent response for the 3-hour early dismissal? Has that been
I think the district has been doing that for so long, I haven't heard a single word about it.
Okay. Just wanted to know how parents felt, you know.
I think they're used to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
Dr. Amick?
I have nothing.
Okay, thank you.
I have nothing.
Nothing? Okay. Dr. Cartwright, do you have anything?
No.
You're going to keep it to yourself, right?
Well, this is, I think for board members, I guess I am, yeah. Okay, no, thank you.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for hanging in here. It's a long meeting. There's an incredible amount of agenda items tonight. This is somewhat abnormal to have that many agenda items, but fortunately there was some duplication of some things because we were dealing with multiple calendars, what have you. I encourage all of you to continue to engage. Think about these representative positions that we talked about. Those are time consuming, I know, but it's important that we have that. And provide input. Things are working well, they aren't working well, please provide that to me or to Director Kindig, and we'll make the adjustments. And I also encourage you, if you have questions about, as you go into more detail into the agenda items, Dr. Cartwright has, made it available to us. If we have a question, ask the question, via email, and we could summarize it during a meeting for the public's purposes. But rather than put them in a position where they have to tell us they'll get back to us next month, if we let them know it in advance, they can give us an answer and we can talk about it in the meeting, and it'll be relevant to our decision that we're going to make. So I think we'll continue to make some refinements as we gain experience and go along. Future meeting, we have our next board meeting is on the 16th, 1 week from today, at 6 p.m. We have director training.
Oh.
No, the meeting is at 7 p.m. We have 6 p.m. training, right? And that's
Correct.
with you, Mr. Pratt? That's correct. So make sure that's on your calendars, so we're here at 6 o'clock for that.
And there'll be a quiz afterwards, just.
And a quiz, yeah.
Cupcakes? Just kidding. Just kidding.
All right.
You have to throw books already.
How about some Cheez-Its, Heidi?
Or those BLM M&Ms, right?
I ate them all. They're all gone.
They're all gone. Too bad. All right. Any other
We need to
comments or questions? We need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Is been moved and seconded. Motion by Director Hogan. Who seconded it?
Seconded by Wolverton.
By Mr. Wolverton. Okay. All in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. No opposition. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.